Chapter 859. It turned out that he had been mastering the heavenly Tao of the 10 universes all along. Looking at his palm, he closed his eyes and thought for a moment. Unlike Gu Cheng, he hadn't mastered the 3000 heavenly Tao at a very young age. His 3000 heavenly Tao had also been acquired bit by bit through memory retrieval, but this kind of memory retrieval was very slow. Wang Ling had only mastered all the heavenly Tao when he was about 13 or 14 years old. But now, according to Book of Sage Immortal, this mystery seemed to have been solved. Why had his memory retrieval been so slow when he was a child? It was very likely that the heavenly Tao he had awakened was the heavenly Tao of the 10 universes. And it was very likely that some kind of fusion had occurred in the process. The heavenly Tao of the 10 universes was 30,000. Although Wang Ling didn't have a clear understanding of his own strength, it wasn't like he didn't know the number. He was well aware that there were only 3000 heavenly Tao in his memory. But there were countless branches under the 3000 heavenly Tao, so listening to Book of Sage Immortal now, Wang Ling had a rough deduction. That was, during the process of his memory retrieval, the actual number of heavenly Tao he had awakened was a whole 30,000. He had awakened the 3000 heavenly Tao of the 10 universes in total, but these heavenly Tao had all been fused. That was to say, although it looked like he had 3000 heavenly Tao now, it was actually 30,000. Wang Ling was stunned. Even his mother didn't know that he was so awesome. At that moment, Book of Sage Immortal, who was completely unaware, was still immersed in its own praise. If the heavens hadn't given birth to Lord Ling, all eternity would have been like a long night. Given my Lord's absolute strength, if he has children in the future, they will definitely reach the top when they are born. The corners of Wang Ling's mouth twitched secretly. It was still too far away to talk about children. He didn't have a girlfriend yet. Besides, how could a girlfriend be as delicious as crispy noodle snacks? Wang Ling couldn't be blamed for this. After all, he was only 16 years old now. Indeed, he couldn't imagine himself in the future hugging his child and shouting to everyone he met, "My son Wang Teng has the potential to become a great emperor." 5 minutes later, Gu Xuanji's detailed information was displayed. Wang Ling looked at the information Book of Sage Immortal reported. According to Book of Sage Immortal, in addition to his 7th universe, Gu Xuanji had also been in the 1st and 10th universes. Furthermore, the information on his occupation which Book of Sage Immortal had given him showed, Keeper of Order. Could it be someone who corrected the order? Wang Ling lowered his head in thought. At this moment, Book of Sage Immortal spoke again, "My lord. Can I guess what you're thinking?" Wang Ling nodded. Book of Sage Immortal, Gu Xuanji, who was originally born in Universe 7, is related to Universe 1 and Universe 10, and has the identity of a Keeper of Order. His lord should have already thought about it. Shortly after Gu Xuanji was born in Universe 7, he was recognized by the Heavenly Way Governing Committee and became the controller of the Order of the 3 universes in order to fix some of the mistakes that had occurred during the development of the universe. Gu Xuanji's return from the future must be to correct some kind of mistake. Of course, I think the wise and mighty Lord has already thought of these things. Wang Ling, Book of Sage Immortal paused, then said, "Gu Xuanji transmigrated to an era before he was born, so this person definitely didn't come for him." According to the data, among the remaining people, Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi are the only ones who can be connected to Gu Xuanji. Of course, I'm sure his lord has also thought of this, so I'll get to the main point. Wang Ling, Book of Sage Immortal, according to the data, Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi won't have any emotional connection in the future. Lu Qingyi and Gu Xuanji's father, Gu Cheng, will become husband and wife by accident. The child they eventually gave birth to is this Gu Xuanji. According to the data, Wang Zhen's ending was rather tragic. After losing Lu Qingyi, he embarked on an interstellar journey on his own. From this, it can be inferred that Gu Xuanji's transmigration from the future to the present is most likely for the following 3 reasons. First, don't let Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi develop feelings for each other. Second, take the initiative to matchmake Lu Qingyi and her father, Gu Cheng. Third, make Wang Zhen stay. Wang Zhen will make an important contribution to the development of Universe 7 in the future. So, He absolutely can't be allowed to go traveling after breaking up with his love. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. So that was what was going on. Book of Sage Immortal, my lord, you must be joking. I've only scratched the surface. My lord's considerations are definitely more thorough. Wang Ling, it was still August 18th, the day of the duel between Grandfather Wang and Jiang Haifu, the head of Kitchen Knife sect. After several weeks of preparation and special training, Grandfather Wang and Jiang Haifu had adjusted themselves to a relatively good competitive state. Kitchen Knife sect, led by Jiang Haifu, was a rare up-and-coming sect enterprise in recent decades. Its overall fighting strength might not be as good as that of other sects, but it was so large and had so many disciples that it had a chain effect all over the country. Furthermore, Kitchen Knife sect would soon launch a new franchise model, spreading its sect around the world in the form of a franchise rather than limiting itself to running its own stores. With such a powerful mind, Jiang Haifu's ability to manipulate the entire situation was unquestionable. However, only Jiang Haifu knew that the biggest reason why he could achieve what he had today was because of that recipe that he had inadvertently picked up back then. If it wasn't for that recipe, it would have been very difficult for Kitchen Knife sect to achieve what it was today. But while it was called a duel, the format was actually very simple. In other words, Old Man Wang and Jiang Haifu would cook their own dishes in the kitchen. Without revealing who made the dishes, they would let the audience evaluate the taste of the dishes and then give each dish a score. The one with the highest score would win. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, Grandfather Wang and Jiang Haifu's dishes today had to be completely innovative, and they had to make dishes that had never been made before. This rule was actually set up specifically for Old Man Wang. Ever since the old man came to the Wang family, he had displayed many of his specialties, the most famous of which was the sweet and sour pork ribs made with ji syrup. When Wang Ling went downstairs, he found that there were already a lot of guests at home. It wasn't just the people from the Wang family's small villa who were taking part in the scoring this time. Wang Ming, Grenade Throwing, Immortal Toya, Little Silver, Zhai Yin and Jiang Haifu's son Jiang Bai were also here. In addition, there was Lu Qingyi and Wang Zhen. It now looked like Book of Sage Immortal's judgment was completely correct. If Gu Xuanji hadn't come, these two would have been a couple all day long. Even if they were enemies, they could develop feelings for each other. But if Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi fell in love with each other in the future, what would be the reason for this? Chapter 860. There were quite a few people at home today. It had been a long time since the Wang family's small villa had been this lively. When Wang Ling went downstairs, he saw Lu Qingyi, Wang Zhen and the others sitting obediently on the sofa. It looked like the two of them had already been warned by people who had visited the Wang family's small villa before. After all, everyone knew that Father Wang, Mother Wang and Grandfather Wang were all hidden big shots, but in fact, whether it was Father Wang, Mother Wang or Old Man Wang, they were all just body refinement cultivators. In this era of national cultivation, body refinement cultivators were no different from ordinary people. At most, they had slightly better strength and physiques. In Wang Ling's opinion, Father Wang's health wasn't any better. He got hemorrhoids every now and then, but he refused to look for Wang Ling because of his pride. In recent years, the only time Father Wang had come to him for magic treatment was for his hair. Last year, in order to rush up the monthly votes list, Father Wang had spent 3 whole months in a row writing 20,000 words a day. The other writers on the website had angrily called him an animal. Staying up late for a long time had also caused Father Wang's hairline to recede without limit. Every time he took a shower, he would grab a bunch of hair, which fell to the floor like noodle soup. Furthermore, because of the dry weather at that time, coupled with his weak body, Father Wang had hemorrhoids due to excessive internal heat and frequent nosebleeds. Therefore, when he was bathing, the falling hair and the dripping blood mixed together. From afar, it looked like a pot of duck vermicelli soup. That year, Father Wang couldn't stand the harassment and finally went to Wang Ling. Wang Ling just raised his finger lightly and touched the spot between Father Wang's eyebrows, and all the abnormalities on Father Wang's body directly disappeared. Although staying up late was a common occurrence for Father Wang now, he had the refreshing cigar the head of state had given him, so he didn't suffer from the after-effects of staying up late. But it was easy for people to get hemorrhoids if they stayed up too much. Actually, Wang Ling had a trick that could make Father Wang's hemorrhoids disappear forever. However, this method was a little violent. He had to touch it with his finger. But forget about Father Wang, even Wang Ling himself couldn't bring himself to do it, so he had never brought it up. He reckoned that if he took action, he might not even be able to eat crispy noodle snacks in the future. In the kitchen, Old Man Wang and Jiang Haifu were still busy. In order to show fairness, a barrier had been set up outside the kitchen to prevent the cultivators present from peeping into the kitchen. But this barrier couldn't fool Wang Ling's eyes. Grandfather Wang and Jiang Haifu were now preparing to cook. He saw Jiang Haifu take out a knife. This knife seemed to be made of ice. Under the light, it was crystal clear and extremely translucent. Jiang Haifu held the thick handle of the knife. He pressed the fish with one hand and pierced the ice knife into the fish with the other. He aimed at an angle and pulled. A piece of tight, glossy, and cold fish skin was peeled off by Jiang Haifu. This was an extremely powerful knife technique. It seemed that Jiang Haifu was going to cook fish dishes today. However, on the other side, Old Man Wang seemed to be making a fish dish as well. Today, the two of them were competing with the same theme of the dish. Jiang Haifu peeled off the fish skin and soaked it in clean water. Then, he looked at Old Man Wang, who was also preparing the fish skin. Old Man Wang wasn't using an ice knife, which was already very surprising to Jiang Haifu. The ice knife was the best knife for cooking fish skin, because the temperature of the ice knife was lower than that of a normal kitchen knife. It could preserve the freshness of the fish skin at a low temperature when peeling off the fish skin. At the same time, it would not damage the meat. But the knife Old Man Wang was using was actually a meter-long broadsword. At that moment, Old Man Wang had already taken off his shirt to reveal his old but firm muscles. That was right. Muscles. Old Man Wang had always had muscles. Although Old Man Wang had Alzheimer's a while ago, he had never given up on exercising. Even though he was getting older and his metabolism had slowed down a lot, his body was still full of muscles that even young people would be envious of. Of course, when the old man wore clothes, it was impossible to tell at all. Seeing this, Wang Ling felt a little regretful. If Granny was still alive, she would definitely be very happy. It was a pity that Wang Ling hadn't been born at that time, otherwise Granny Wang would definitely still be alive now. Granny Wang was now in peace. Father Wang knew that Wang Ling had the ability to resurrect her, but he didn't want to disturb her. Back then, Granny Wang had been a famous green flower in the village, and when she passed away, the entire village had come out to send her off. If Granny Wang was casually resurrected, that place would become a ghost village, and it might even attract ghost-catching Taoist priests. Back to business. At that moment, Old Man Wang was like an executioner on the execution ground with a meter-long broadsword in his hand. His face was as calm as an ancient well, but this imposing manner that emanated from the inside out made Jiang Haifu dumbfounded. Then, the old man's eyes narrowed. Like a hunter looking for prey, his gaze was firmly fixed on that plump big fish on the chopping board. The big fish wasn't completely dead yet, and hadn't even been completely scaled off. Its eyes sparkled as it shook its tail desperately on the chopping board, as if to tell others that it could still be saved. But in front of a chef, in the end, this pitiful fish could only become a dish. This was a fish that could make people happy after eating it, so in the eyes of both Old Man Wang and Jiang Haifu, it wasn't pitiful at all. Then, the old man's belly bulged slightly, as if he was gathering his strength to breathe in and out. For some reason, even Jiang Haifu felt the temperature drop a few degrees at that moment. Old Man Wang clearly wasn't using an ice blade, but there was a very cold feeling in his heart. The next second, Old Man Wang's eyes widened in silence. Depression sword technique. Then, he chopped down on the chopping board. But this chop wasn't aimed directly at that plump big fish, but stopped zero. 0.0001 centimeters away from the big fish's round and sexy lips. In a flash, the big fish, which had been jumping around and thinking it could still be saved, actually stopped struggling. It didn't even move its tail. Just when Jiang Haifu had yet to understand what Old Man Wang's move was about to do, the big fish actually let out a lament. The next second, the big fish sat up directly on the chopping board, then took off its fish skin and folded it to the side. It was already depressed, and there was no longer the light of hope in the corner of its eyes. There was only a strange light, Jiang Haifu and Wang Ling. Chapter 861. Was this fish sighing just now? Jiang Haifu seriously suspected that there was something wrong with his hearing, but just now, he had indeed seen the fish sit up and take off its skin, as if it had become a city spirit. This was absolutely perfect fish skin, there wasn't the slightest trace of a knife cutting it. Except for the hole at the end, the fish skin was a very smooth and round piece. The best proof was Old Man Wang's next move. The old man tied up the end of the fish skin, and then started to pour water into it. Wang Ling was also stupefied. He had seen the old man cook before, but he had never seen the skill he was displaying today. It seemed that the old man had undergone special training for today's duel, and had even brought out his special skills that he had been hiding for a long time. This opponent was unexpectedly strong. Cold sweat ran down Jiang Haifu's forehead. After washing the fish skin, he used precise knife skills to cut it into strips of uniform width. His fish skin dish was a highly elastic fish skin noodles made of fish skin as the raw material. The most difficult thing about fish skin was actually getting rid of the fishy smell. Most chefs would choose to use spicy condiments such as chili and pepper to cover up the fishy smell. But the truth was that this was a relatively low-class method. Spicy wasn't necessarily suitable for everyone, and the dish this time was for everyone to taste. Thus, the difficulty Jiang Haifu had to overcome was to make this dish so fragrant without using chili. Not only did it have to be devoid of the fishy smell, it also had to have a texture that would appeal to all ages and make people want to eat it again after eating it. The more skilled a chef was, the more they would be able to use the charm of the ingredients themselves to set off each other, cover up their shortcomings, and then bring out the strengths of each ingredient as much as possible. Thus, Jiang Haifu's dish didn't have any condiments. Salt. Message. Pepper noodles. Soy sauce. Ginger garlic and so on, none of these. Jiang Haifu had to extract them from the ingredients themselves. Jiang Haifu did not rely on seasonings. This was also the secret skill that allowed him to roam the Chu world for many years. He gave this secret skill a happy and intimate name, Haifu's family meal. This could be considered Jiang Haifu's signature move. Jiang Haifu had originally considered that the old man beside him was already old, so he might have been able to be a little more modest, so as not to embarrass the old man and cause him to lose too badly. However, after he saw the old man's depression saber technique, Jiang Haifu immediately felt a sense of crisis in his heart. Jiang Haifu did not want to lose this battle. Thinking of this, Jiang Haifu took a deep breath and began to process the other ingredients. Because he didn't know how to use seasonings, he used more ingredients than the old man. Moreover, he only used a part of the ingredients, so he needed to cut off the parts that were used. In this way, knife skills became very important. However, after witnessing the old man's depression saber technique, Jiang Haifu actually felt a little uneasy. When he was processing the other ingredients of the fish skin noodles, he kept sneaking glances at the old man. He wanted to know what other tricks the old man would come up with. On the other side, the old man filled half of the fish skin bags that he had cut with the depression saber technique with water and added some rice inside. There were 12 people in the house today, so he had to try his best to satisfy their appetite. Therefore, the old man used the same method to make another fish skin bag that was exactly the same. Each fish skin bag swelled up like a balloon after being filled with water and rice. It was as big as a cabbage. At this time, Jiang Haifu could also see the significance of the two fish that the old man had carefully selected. The fish that he had seen the old man choose before were all relatively old. Old fish might not have fresh meat, but their skin was very stubborn. Moreover, this fish species was the wave fish, which was one of the more tenacious among the sea fishes. Therefore, the moment he saw the main ingredient, Jiang Haifu thought of the idea of using the wave fish to make fish skin noodles. The old man's train of thought was even more jumpy. He used the fish skin to pour water and rice into it. Was he going to make fish rice? Just as Jiang Haifu was feeling puzzled, a voice suddenly rang out. Old man Wang took out a jar from the cabinet at the bottom. He gently knocked on the jar with his hand. Get up. It's time to work. Then, he opened the jar. Jiang Haifu was surprised to find that there was a yellow and white-orange cat in the jar. This cat's whole body was dissolved in the jar like a liquid. But after hearing old man Wang's call, it immediately poked its head out of the jar. Jiang Haifu smelled a strong smell of dried fish in the jar. It was probably left in the jar by the old man for the orange cat to eat. The orange cat stretched out its paws lazily, then jumped out and landed on the ground. Then, it stood up on its 2 legs. Old man, this is a cat from my hometown. I picked it up on a tricycle a while ago. It's a cat that can cook. The old man scratched his head and smiled. I'm old and can't punch 80 punches per second anymore, so I asked this vegetable cat to help me. Brother Haifu, do you mind? Jiang Haifu quickly waved his hand. Of course not, please go ahead, old man. He was almost 80 years old, this competition was actually not very fair to begin with. The old man massaged his muscles, then took out something from his pocket and threw it to the orange cat on the ground. Jiang Haifu looked at it and found that it was a pair of super small boxing gloves. What was he going to do? Stunned, Jiang Haifu watched as the old man hung the fish skin pouches, which were previously filled with water and rice, on a bamboo pole with a hook. He placed the bamboo pole horizontally in front of his chest, and the 2 fish skin pouches were suspended in the air just like that. Then, the old man narrowed his eyes and stared at the orange cat. Vegetable cat. Use Muay Thai warning. At his command, the orange cat abruptly punched the 2 fish skin bags. In a split second, the whole kitchen was filled with the sound of, hit 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 hit. Jiang Haifu and Wang Ling were stunned. As a chef for many years, Jiang Haifu finally understood what on earth this cat was doing. This vegetable cat was using its skillful punching skills to rub the air around the fish skin bags to heat up the air at a uniform speed. Furthermore, it was using the vibration of the high-speed punches to extract the salt from the fish skin bags and fuse it with the rice inside. This was a one-step operation to enhance the flavor. It wasn't using any condiments, but it wasn't using any extra ingredients either. Jiang Haifu realized, he had lost again. Chapter 862. Old Man Wang was undoubtedly a strong opponent. Jiang Haifu regretted his previous behavior of underestimating his opponent. Compared to Old Man Wang, he was obviously not prepared enough. If he had known earlier, he would have reviewed the Record of Divine Cuisine before coming here. This was an ancient book that he accidentally found back then, the author of which was unknown. But it was also because of this ancient book that Jiang Haifu had the achievements he had today. I thought of a recipe, but I forgot it. Can I ask for help outside? Jiang Haifu was stunned and said. As you wish, Brother Haifu. Old Man Wang smiled slightly. I also invited this vegetable cat as external help. If Brother Haifu has forgotten the recipe, you can go and investigate it. As you get older, you will always forget some things. When Old Man Wang said this, Jiang Haifu's face was boiling hot. For a chef, it was actually a shame to forget his own recipe. The most important thing was that the Record of Divine Cuisine was not written by Jiang Haifu himself. In fact, the fish skin noodles dish today was also not Jiang Haifu's idea. It was also from this Record of Divine Cuisine recipe. Jiang Haifu was a person who cared a lot about winning or losing. He thought that he could win this match beautifully, but Old Man Wang's 2 consecutive tricks directly made him dumbfounded. He even forgot his own formula. Sometimes, people would have intermittent amnesia. Perhaps everyone had the same experience, that is, when talking to a person, they originally wanted to ask a question, but when the words were on the tip of their tongue, they directly forgot the question they wanted to ask before. Jiang Haifu spent 2 minutes on the phone and asked his wife to send him the PSD format file of Record of Divine Cuisine to his mobile phone. Record of Divine Cuisine had been made into an electronic file. Because the paper of the old classic had turned yellow, Jiang Haifu had to spend a lot of money every year to carry out maintenance and repair work on the original. Now, Jiang Haifu did not even dare to touch this classic because every page turned would cause damage to the classic. So a long time ago, Record of Divine Cuisine had already been made into a PSD format by Jiang Haifu's team. However, this PSD file was extremely hidden, and Jiang Haifu had never made it public. Even his wife had to go deep into the computer files under Jiang Haifu's instructions over the phone. Finally, she found it in an encrypted and locked folder named, Kushuan is really handsome. Soon, Jiang Haifu received a PSD file from his wife on his phone. Similarly, this document was also locked. Only Jiang Haifu knew about it. Jiang Haifu was searching for the recipe for fish skin noodles. Because the recipe in the Record of Divine Cuisine was similar to a notebook, there were no related notes. Jiang Haifu could only rely on his own memory to find the approximate location. At this moment, Old Man Wang said, 818. Jiang Haifu was stunned. He flipped to page 818, and it turned out that the content on this page was really about the creative cooking of fish skin noodles. Jiang Haifu was dumbfounded. Jiang Haifu said, Old Master, you, Old Man Wang chuckled. When I saw Brother Haifu's fish skin noodle dish, it reminded me of a recipe that I wrote casually when I was young. I've already forgotten the name. However, he still remembered the page number. It was page 818. And it's the same number as the day of our competition today. Is this a coincidence? Jiang Haifu was stunned. You wrote it when you were young? When? Old Man Wang said, probably when I was 13 or 14 years old. At that time, I liked to let my imagination run wild all day long. While working as an apprentice, I had the idea of writing. Jiang Haifu said, writing? Yes. Writing. Old Man Wang recalled, writing always requires material. Without material, you can't make up a story. Then, I began to make up recipes. I planned to use the recipes as material in the story after I finished making them. Unexpectedly, the more I made up, the more I made up. Jiang Haifu, Old Man Wang said, in the end, before I could finish writing, I was specially recruited to be a head chef. After that, I never wrote again. And I don't know where this recipe went. Then, coincidentally, when I was in my 40s, I entered Kikari restaurant and found that many of the dishes inside were exactly the same as the ones in my recipe. Jiang Haifu, Old Man Wang, that Kikari restaurant was a new store, and it wasn't very famous at the time. When I saw the dishes, it was like I had returned to when I was a teenager. At that time, I was so moved. I felt that this was definitely fate. It's all fate. Jiang Haifu, Old Man Wang, Brother Haifu. This fish skin noodles of yours is also the link of fate between us. Speaking up to this point, Jiang Haifu simply wanted to cry. Old man, please don't call me Brother Haifu. You can just call me Haiwa. Jiang Haifu really did want to cry. He had been looking for the owner of the recipe for so many years, he never thought that it would actually be this Old Man Wang in front of him. Furthermore, he had made it up when he was 13 or 14, where on earth did this immortal come from? At that moment, there was only one thought in Jiang Haifu's mind. He wanted to admit defeat, elsewhere, Mo Immortal Castle, which had already been incorporated into the Office of Strategic Deception, had an unexpected guest. This person was none other than Gu Xuanji, a transfer student who had just joined number 60 high school not long ago. Gu Xuanji didn't hide his sincerity at all, and very generously placed a tetrahedron crystal on the table. The Lord and Lady turned pale with fright when they saw this. The Tesseract of the Universe. This was a super rare material, several grades higher than primordial black crystal. Gu Xuanji's expression was very serious. This is my offer, and I only want information. The Lord rubbed his hands together. Then, what kind of information would you like to buy, sir? You can buy anything you want at this price. That's good. Gu Xuanji nodded. I want information on a person. The Lord, who is it? Does he have a Taoist name? Gu Xuanji nodded again. Yes. After saying that, Gu Xuanji slapped a photo on the table. The Lord and Lady looked at each other in astonishment when they saw the person in the photo. Because the person in the photo wasn't anyone else, it was the current leader of the Office of Strategic Deception's Spirit Medicine Team, Immortal Toya. Why did this person want information on Immortal Toya? The Lord and Lady were stupefied. When all was said and done, as the core of the Office of Strategic Deception, Immortal Toya was now the Lord and Lady's superior. How would they dare sell information on their leader? The Lord broke out in a sweat and stared at Gu Xuanji. Sir, wait a moment. I have to go ask. But as soon as the Lord said this, Gu Xuanji's hand was already on his shoulder. Wait. The Lord? Gu Xuanji, he's your superior. The Lord and Lady were startled again. This person could read minds. Then that's easy. Gu Xuanji smiled faintly. You only have two choices now. First, take the universe's Rubik's Cube and sell me the information. Second, refuse the deal and let me look through your memories. The Lord gritted his teeth. He never thought that such a troublesome person would actually turn up today. Genius 1 second remember website URL. Mobile version, M. Chapter 863. At that moment, the Lord and the Lady were drenched in cold sweat. The man in front of them was extremely tricky to deal with. He had a head of gray hair and the dignified temperament of a young master from an aristocratic family. He looked like an elegant gentleman, but his eyes were full of murderous intent. It was as if a knife was hidden in his smile, which was pressed against the Lord and the Lady's necks. The Lord and the Lady were a little familiar with this oppressive force. It couldn't be wrong. This oppressive force was the same as the one crispy noodles Tao Monarch had given them. The Lord and the Lady broke out in a cold sweat and didn't know what to do. At that moment, Gu Xuanji frowned slightly as he stared at the Lord and the Lady. You. Gu Xuanji was astonished to realize that his mind-reading ability had unexpectedly failed. He could use the mind-reading ability to read anyone's mind, but just now, he had actually seen the Lord and the Lady's minds go blank. With the combat power of these two people, he could easily crush them to death like ants. Therefore, it was impossible for them to resist on their own. Gu Xuanji thought that these two people were probably thinking about something that had a restriction on them, which was preventing him from reading their minds. Could it be that they were thinking about Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi? But given their current strength, they weren't a threat to him at all. As a keeper of order who had returned to the past from the future, he should be far stronger than anyone else in this era, including his father Gu Cheng. But why was that so? Gu Xuanji thought it was very strange. Could it be that in this world, there are factors that exist in blind spots? Looking at Gu Xuanji's increasingly gloomy expression, the Lord and the Lady broke out in a cold sweat. They didn't even dare communicate telepathically, for fear that Gu Xuanji would read something else. A moment later, the Lord gave the Lady a meaningful look. Mr. Gu, please wait a moment. I'll have the Lady go get the information. Of course, he couldn't hand over all of Immortal Toya's information. It was a fake document, and apart from Immortal Toya's name and basic information, the rest of the information was Fang Xing's personal history. This was the emergency plan that the Office of Strategic Deception had drawn up for the intelligence team. If they really ran into a problem that they couldn't handle, they could activate this contingency plan. He handed over a fake document and pushed the matter to the thugs. When the time was right, he would inform the thugs. The Lord and Lady of the castle had already practiced this emergency operation countless times to make the entire handover look very smooth. Back then, grenade-throwing senior immortal had specially asked Wang Ling's clone, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch, to supervise it. The lord and lady could already hand over fake information without any distracting thoughts. Therefore, Gu Xuanji's mind reading did not detect any abnormalities at this time, a wise choice. Gu Xuanji nodded with satisfaction. Please take this USB drive, Mr. Gu. The lady handed it over with both hands. All right. Gu Xuanji nodded. With a twist of his body, he transformed into a mass of nothingness and disappeared on the spot. He's finally gone, the lord and lady heaved long sighs of relief. The lady, what should we do next? Let's report to the sect leader first. This person is too dangerous. The lord looked at the tesseract cube on the table. A lot of people regard a high-level material like the tesseract cube as a priceless treasure. A long time ago, there was even an almighty called Huoba who waged war over it. Huoba? That's right. The lord nodded. He also has a younger brother called Yiba. This person actually casually took out the tesseract cube in exchange. His strength is unfathomable. After receiving the USB drive, Gu Xuanji was still very concerned about what had just happened. He felt like he had missed something. Were there other strong experts in this world that he didn't know about? After he left the Lord's building, he went to a place, the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee. When Gu Xuanji appeared here, the 6 great Heavenly Tao all looked at him. A keeper of order? Why had a keeper of order suddenly appeared here? Gu Xuanji stared at the great Heavenly Tao. Your Excellency's Heavenly Tao of Universe 7, I have to trouble you. I need to investigate someone. Sure, fill out the form first. Strength Heavenly Tao nodded as a representative and threw out a golden scroll. Since when do we need to fill out a form? Gu Xuanji was stunned. He remembered that the future Universe 7 didn't have this rule. The rules of the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee of the 10 universes are different. Every period has different rules. If you want to investigate someone, you have to fill out the form first, Time Heavenly Tao replied. I see. Then thank you very much, Your Excellency's Heavenly Tao. Gu Xuanji took the scroll with both hands and filled it out seriously. In the end, the questions on it made Gu Xuanji blank. Questionnaire Survey Question 1. Is your favorite snack crispy noodle snack? Gu Xuanji. Questionnaire Survey Question 2. Which of the following is the correct way to eat crispy noodle snacks? 1. Crush it and sprinkle seasoning packets. 2. Soak it in water. 3. Sprinkle isatis root. 4. Use seaweed to wrap the crispy noodle snack. Gu Xuanji. Questionnaire Survey Question 3. If the crispy noodle snack and your girlfriend fell into the water, which one would you save first? Gu Xuanji. There were still a lot of questions, a total of 999 questions. Of course, all of this was the Heavenly Tao deliberately stalling for time. Because Time Heavenly Tao had already noticed that this keeper of order was the person Wang Ling had been investigating, and given that this person's behavior was suspicious, the 6 great Heavenly Tao had unanimously decided to stall for time. Thus, while Gu Xuanji was answering the questions, the 6 great Heavenly Tao of the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee had all moved to the spare conference room, leaving only their clones behind to deal with Gu Xuanji. Strength Heavenly Tao, this isn't good, this person has actually come knocking on our door. Time Heavenly Tao, as expected of a keeper of order. He didn't hesitate at all when filling out the questionnaire. People who fill out questionnaires at such a rapid pace are usually very scary. There are 999 questions in the questionnaire. But at this rate, it shouldn't take long. Spirit Heavenly Tao, what is the keeper of order's purpose in coming back from the future? Time Heavenly Tao, Gu Xuanji is the keeper of order in charge of 3 universes. For the time being, we don't have the authority to investigate his purpose, but it definitely has something to do with His Excellency Ling. At this time, the best option is for His Excellency Ling to come forward. Death Heavenly Tao, in that case, what are we waiting for? Strength Heavenly Tao nodded. Quickly, go invite Buddha Wang Ling. Chapter 864. X to the power of 8 1 Z yen ad-free update fastest new August 1st Chinese Xiaoshuanet. If it had been anyone else who had so brazenly investigated Wang Ling, the six great heavenly Tao would have mercilessly joined forces to directly suppress them and kick them out of the heavenly Tao governing committee. But Gu Xuanji's identity was very special, as he was the keeper of order for 3 entire universes. Similarly, he was also one of the heavenly Tao's whitelist users, although his specific ranking was far lower than Wang Ling's. That was right, the heavenly Tao whitelist also had a ranking system. Even after being added to the list, the heavenly Tao would rank them according to their contribution to the universe. Gu Xuanji's ranking actually wasn't low, but compared with Wang Ling, there was still a lot of room for improvement. Not everyone was qualified to be on the whitelist. For example, Lu Qingyi and Wang Zhen weren't qualified, so, if Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi were used as a yardstick, a lot of people had already been directly eliminated. Thus, while Gu Xuanji was filling out the information, Wang Ling, who had received the news, sent a clone to the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee. Since the Wang family's small villa was still in the middle of a cooking duel, Wang Ling's real body had to stay there. However, this clone he had sent out was a serious clone, which was even stronger than Crispy Noodle's Tao Monarch's clone, which had its own consciousness and wouldn't disappear. Thus, Wang Ling had specially added the word serious in front of this clone. This was a show of respect for the opponent. Wang Ling had always wanted to know the limits of his power. Although he had learned from Book of Sage Immortal about the origin of his 3,000 Great Tao, the truth was that he had always felt that his 3,000 Great Tao wasn't as powerful as he had imagined. The only problem was that he couldn't control it. He was only 16 years old. If he was given 16,000 years of cultivation, he was confident that he could master them all. Even if it wasn't 16,000 years, even if it was 1,600 years, the situation would still be much better than it was now. Gu Xuanji was a person born in the domain of the gods, and in the future he would become the keeper of order of the universe. Such a person shouldn't be too weak. At that moment, when Wang Ling's serious clone appeared in the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee's Heavenly Tao space, Gu Xuanji had already reacted. He put down the questionnaire in his hand and smiled. Sure enough, answering questions is just to stall for time. The clones of the 6 great heavenly Tao immediately turned into nothingness, leaving the heavenly Tao space to the 2 of them. Although the true bodies of the 6 great heavenly Tao felt that it would be better to create another subspace, with the strength of these 2 people, if they were to fight here, it would very likely affect the spatial order of the neighboring universe. However, it was too late to say anything now. The 6 great heavenly Taos did not want to be involved in this battle. Gu Xuanji twisted his face to stare at Wang Ling's serious clone, and was stunned by its face. He never thought that such a figure whom the 6 great heavenly Tao revered so much would actually be his classmate from number 60 high. When he entered number 60 high school back then, his initial goal hadn't been to get close to Wang Ling, but to get close to Lu Qingyi and Wang Zhen. After learning that these 2 wanted to mingle in a foundation establishment high school, he had decided to take the transfer exam together. But Gu Xuanji had never imagined that there would be such a person hidden by his side, and most importantly, he hadn't sensed anything at all. Gu Xuanji's expression turned serious as he started to size up Wang Ling. The youngster in front of him looked ordinary, but gave him an astonishing sense of pressure. In fact, there weren't many people who could give him pressure. The keepers of order in the other universes all had some skill, and Gu Xuanji had been fortunate enough to exchange pointers with them. None of the keepers of order could give him a faint sense of fear just from the sound of their own breathing before they had even started fighting. If he had to say that there was, it would be his father, Gu Qing, but in this era, his father Gu Qing wasn't that strong yet. We keepers of order have a list of the strongest people in the universe, and you're not on it. Gu Xuanji stared at Wang Ling with a solemn expression. Since you're not on the list, you're a lawbreaker, and should be eliminated. He was trying to get information out of him. Gu Xuanji was well aware that since Wang Ling wasn't on the list, there had to be some special circumstances that he didn't know about. Looking at how scared the 6 great heavenly Tao were, he was actually already well aware of what was going on. Wang Ling's identity and background were probably more complicated than he had imagined. Although Gu Xuanji had a solemn expression on the surface, his heart was actually filled with excitement. Duels and challenges with all the experts could give him a sense of excitement. Wang Ling, because they were now in the heavenly Tao space, which was an absolutely fair space, there was no problem of overlapping timelines. Now, Wang Ling could hear Gu Xuanji's thoughts as usual. This guy was also a drama queen. Gu Xuanji stared at Wang Ling in silence. He had clearly provoked him just now. The other party had actually been able to keep his composure and not make the first move. Gu Xuanji felt even more excited. Only a big shot could have this kind of steady bearing. What should he do? Should he make the first move? No, he absolutely couldn't make the first move. What if the other party saw through his serious expression but was actually very excited inside? That would be unbecoming of a keeper of order. Gu Xuanji lowered his head and started to release his aura to test Wang Ling. He released 50% of his aura. But after dozens of seconds, the other party actually didn't even frown. Gu Xuanji became even more excited. The pressure of his aura actually had no effect on the other party. It seemed that the other party's strength was far beyond what he had imagined. When he fought, he could let loose to his heart's content and no longer be restrained. When he had fought with several keepers of order from other universes, Gu Xuanji had suppressed his nature countless times, because compared with his overall fighting strength, those keepers of order were still a little weaker. Now, him. Finally, he had met someone who could fight. The corners of Gu Xuanji's mouth curled up slightly, and then he quickly covered his mouth with his hand. Damn it, he was so excited that he couldn't stop the corners of his mouth from curling up. Keeper of order. You dare fight me? Gu Xuanji said in a low voice as he stared at Wang Ling's serious clone in front of him. His face was flushed with excitement, and his blood was boiling all over as wisps of steam erupted from his body. Before the fight, I need to make something clear. I'm not excited. Absolutely not. Not at all. Wang Ling finally understood. This guy was at Sundara, old Tai, set a small goal first. Chapter 865. Gu Xuanji was thoroughly excited. Wang Ling could see steam emanating from the other party's body. When some cultivators became excited when they were full of spirit energy, it was very easy for them to produce this type of spirit energy steam. Specifically, their skin would turn red, steam would come out of their pores, their adrenal glands would surge, and their spirits would be highly excited. There were no downsides to this phenomenon, and on the contrary, it would make a cultivator more focused in battle. Furthermore, it would greatly increase their explosive power, speed, strength, and toughness. At sea, there was a group of pirates who called this second gear, and the leader of that group of pirates had developed third gear and fourth gear as a foundation. However, this phenomenon of spiritual energy steam had only appeared on a very small number of people. In modern society, most cultivators could only rely on the medicinal power brought about by taking drugs to produce this phenomenon, but Gu Xuanji produced it on his own without the assistance of any drugs. This was enough to prove Gu Xuanji's cultivation foundation. This man was very strong. He was even stronger than Immortal Zhen Yuan and Demon Saint second-generation Merman. Wang Ling wouldn't know exactly how strong he was until he actually fought them. But based on what he could see now, he was probably several dozen times stronger. After all, he was a keeper of order, who maintained order in 3 universes, so it made sense that Gu Xuanji had this kind of strength. Wang Ling took a deep breath. He was just curious about the attitude of this battle. After all, there had never been a battle between a keeper of order. And Gu Xuanji probably represented the highest level of fighting strength among the keepers of order. If he couldn't even defeat Gu Xuanji's clone, Wang Ling would be very disappointed. The moment Wang Ling's dead fish eyes turned serious as he stared at Gu Xuanji received a signal. He knew that the battle had already begun. There was no need for too much communication in a showdown between the strong. Although I don't know your exact identity, you mustn't underestimate me. Gu Xuanji grinned slightly, but then quickly suppressed it, because he was too excited. His bad habit of baring his teeth slipped out again. He smiled without showing his teeth. As a keeper of order, he should be serious, otherwise it didn't match his style at all. Wang Ling tilted his head, and at that moment, fine strands of hair flew out of Gu Xuanji's hair like dragons to linger around him. Then, Gu Xuanji shouted softly, and the strands of hair actually intertwined, forming several chains. This was Gu Xuanji's personal magic treasure, the 3,000 chains of order. It was a chain refined directly from his hair. It could pierce through the void, and it was extremely flexible and restrictive. When Wang Ling saw this scene, he couldn't help but exclaim in his heart. In the end, he was the strongest among the keepers of order, and his methods were indeed different. The overall combat power of this, 3,000 chains of order, had already surpassed that of a world-defying artifact, and it was estimated to be about the same as an 8th-grade divine artifact. However, Gu Xuanji's strength should not be limited to just this. This magic treasure was just a test. Many cultivators chose to use their own skin and hair to refine magic treasures. For example, Miss Azwa had once appeared and refined her own fingernails. Another example was a famous eye refiner in the cultivation circle, Taoist Huayu. This person was famous for refining his own eye power, and his eye power was extraordinary. He could weaken everyone into legal Lolitas and increase his own combat power by weakening the enemy. However, the above choices were relatively normal. Whether it was the nails or the eyes, they were relatively easy to control. Only the hair was different. Because there were so many strands of hair, it wasn't easy to refine. Furthermore, it usually had to be refined one strand at a time, and even if it was successfully refined, it was extremely difficult to operate. Gu Xuanji's ability to refine 3,000 strands of hair into his personal magic treasure was enough to prove that he had extremely high control over his spirit energy. Wang Ling was actually someone who didn't find it hard to admit that others were outstanding. He would usually analyze the strengths of his opponents. Respect for your opponent would make you more humble. Furthermore, there was another advantage to listing out strengths, and that was that when Wang Ling won, it would comfort him. These strengths would tell Wang Ling that his opponent wasn't weak, it was that he was too strong. Even Wang Ling himself didn't know why he was so strong. Take this. At that moment, Gu Xuanji's eyes were fixed on Wang Ling. He stretched out his hand, and the 3,000 chains of order behind him actually pierced through the void in the blink of an eye to attack Wang Ling's hands and feet. Wang Ling frowned as he realized that he couldn't follow the trajectory of the chains. The chains of order don't pass through the surface space. Wang Ling murmured in his heart as he realized something unexpected. And that was that the space the chains themselves relied on wasn't the surface space, but the space of the universe. Gu Xuanji used his power as a keeper of order to actually link his personal magic treasure to 3 universes at the same time. Simply put, when the strands of hair pierced through the void, they had to make a turn in another universe before coming back here. Only a divine artifact could penetrate space like this. Thus, when the chains of order successfully passed through the void space, Wang Ling's serious clone couldn't catch them at all, and he instantly fell into Gu Xuanji's trap. Outside the battlefield, the 6 great heavenly Tao were also watching. This showdown was no different from a fight between immortals. Every move and every technique seemed to be filled with the vast divine might of heavenly Tao. Strength heavenly Tao, this Gu Xuanji actually has the upper hand? Time heavenly Tao, the battle hasn't really started yet, and even His Excellency Ling's clone isn't that easy to deal with. But given Gu Xuanji's current fighting strength, I'm afraid His Excellency Ling won't be able to deal with him with just a few simple slaps. One by one, the other heavenly Tao nodded in agreement. After all, Gu Xuanji represented the strongest fighting force of a keeper of order. At that moment, the chains of order were wrapped around Wang Ling's wrists and ankles, and the pressure of hundreds of heavenly Tao on each chain firmly restrained his movements. Success. There was doubt in Gu Xuanji's eyes, but he didn't slack off in the slightest. He didn't believe that the youngster in front of him only had this kind of strength. But at the same time, Gu Xuanji was also a little vexed. He had already used his personal magic treasure, but was he still unable to force the youngster to use it to fight him? In a duel between two cultivators, when one side took out his natal magical equipment, the other side also had to take out his natal magical equipment. Even if they didn't intend to use their natal magical equipment to fight, it was still necessary to take out their natal magical equipment. This was out of courtesy. Of course, it wasn't that Wang Ling was being impolite by not using his personal magic treasure. Furthermore, his natal magic treasure was meant to be eaten. As for what a personal magic treasure was, everyone knew in their hearts, Wang Ling had already eaten today's set of life-bonded magic treasures. Chapter 866. As everyone knew, Wang Ling had to make an appointment in advance to take out his life-bonded magic treasure. But even if he could make an appointment, there actually wasn't anyone who could make him take out his magic treasure. Because for Wang Ling, almost every battle could be settled with a few slaps. If he couldn't settle it, he would just slap them a few more times. But he couldn't use such a simple and crude method to deal with Gu Xuanji in front of him. The other party was a keeper of order, and also one of the most powerful among them. Wang Ling had to take the other party's face into consideration. Wang Ling considered himself a considerate person, although he currently didn't have a girlfriend. When Lotus Sun had taken a fancy to him back then, it had only been a short-lived passion, hadn't it stopped after he ignored her? Thus, even Wang Ling himself wasn't sure whether a girl would really like him. Even with the mind-reading ability, he couldn't tell if a girl's attitude toward him was just a momentary misconception. With his rather unsociable personality, it was actually very hard for him to attract people, right? You have to concentrate in a fight, how can you daydream? Gu Xuanji stared at Wang Ling with his hands on his hips. He deliberately tightened the chains of order, but the boy in front of him didn't seem to feel any pain, and didn't even frown. A few seconds later, he felt the boy's pupils change. Gu Xuanji had never felt such immense pressure before. The young man's eyes turned crimson, and they looked like petals of a flower. A very strong ocular power fell upon the substance chains. Gu Xuanji's scalp went numb, and his hair stood on end. Very powerful eye power. Gu Xuanji had never seen this kind of power before. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was the strongest in the world. Without using any eye techniques, the boy could rely on his own eye power to bring about such oppression. It was truly shocking. Bzzzt. In the next moment, Gu Xuanji clearly felt the chains of order being activated by a powerful force. On the young man's arms and body, a complete set of spirit armor was born out of spirit energy. This was spirit armor composed of highly dense spirit energy molecules, and Gu Xuanji had no choice but to withdraw the chains of order for the time being. As a godly weapon, the chains of order weren't without their natural enemies. After all, they were refined from hair, and were very afraid of dealing with highly dense spirit energy molecules. If Gu Xuanji stayed in this environment for too long, his hair would dry up and become greasy. There was a wound in his hair. If the quality of the hair was damaged, the power of the chains of order would be greatly reduced. Of course, under normal circumstances, the chains of order weren't afraid of high-density spiritual energy molecules. After all, as Gu Xuanji's life-bonded magic treasure, the chains of order could even travel through space freely. How could ordinary high-density spirit energy molecules affect his chains of order? In the Cultivation Encyclopedia, the unit of spiritual energy was yards. In a cubic meter of space, anything with a spiritual energy density of more than 1,000 yards would be classified as a high-density spiritual energy molecular substance. Meanwhile, when the 1,000-yard, 1 cubic meter molecular sphere exploded, the resulting explosion was no less powerful than a high-explosive grenade. Take the Old Devil and General Yi for example. The Old Devil's famous skill, Chaos Ball, and General Yi's famous skill, Palm Sword, were spells that relied on the theory of high-density molecular compression. The Old Devil's Chaos Ball could reach a density of 1 million to 2 million. General Yi's Palm Sword, on the other hand, was stable at around 2 million. In general space, the pressure produced by traveling through space and time was about 10 million spiritual energy molecules. Gu Xuanji's chains of order could travel freely through space and withstand the pressure of up to 20 million spiritual energy molecules. As a keeper of order, Gu Xuanji's chains of order had a clear analytical ability, and could visualize all matter it touched. Just now, Gu Xuanji had chosen to take the chains of order back because he had seen a string of numbers on Wang Ling's spirit energy molecular armor that he didn't understand. Because there were too many digits, Gu Xuanji hadn't even had time to count them clearly, and had immediately taken the chains of order back. The six great heavenly Tao couldn't help sighing with emotion as they watched the battle from the outside. The power of the chains of order is already beyond imagination, but His Excellency Ling's King's Eye is even better. Strength Heavenly Tao sighed. The King's Eye has the power to see through the essence of the universe, and its power can be used to construct spirit armor, which has an extremely strong defense. But as the strongest combatant among the keepers of order, Gu Xuanji's observation skills are nothing to scoff at. As soon as His Excellency Ling summoned his spirit armor, he immediately withdrew the chains of order. His reflexes are indeed formidable, said Time Heavenly Tao. Spirit Heavenly Tao laughed. It's just entertainment to begin with. As the keeper of order of the three great universes, Gu Xuanji isn't careless in his work, and he's an extremely hardworking person. We've already praised His Excellency Ling to the point where we don't want to praise him anymore, so it's better to praise the keeper of order. Although he's indeed a lot weaker than His Excellency Ling, it's already not easy for him to do this much. He deserves praise. Not bad, not bad. He deserves praise. The other heavenly Tao nodded in agreement. But after this battle was over, they decided to have Gu Xuanji stay behind to renovate the Heavenly Tao Committee's conference room, a showdown between the universe's most powerful keeper of order and the dimension's most powerful man. It wasn't like there was nothing to see. The great Heavenly Tao all thought in their hearts that after this showdown, their conference room would be torn to pieces. After the spirit armor was summoned, Gu Xuanji tried a lot of things. What Earth's embrace of the heavenly stars? What divine skyquake? What myriad Earth attraction? What spiraling mass? All of them were actually unable to shake this spiritual armor at all. Those could be said to be destructive attacks. In the past, when he fought against a keeper of order, it would be too late for him to dodge after seeing them, but now, these skills couldn't even scratch the surface of this spiritual armor. This was too domineering. Ordinary spells had no way of dealing with this kind of defense. So, did he have to use a super spell? Gu Xuanji stared at Wang Ling and frowned slightly. He saw that Wang Ling was also deep in thought. Could it be that the other party was also thinking about how to deal with him? On the other side, Wang Ling, who was wrapped up in the impenetrable spirit armor summoned by the King's Eye, was indeed frowning slightly. He hadn't summoned the spirit armor on purpose, because he knew that once the spirit armor was summoned, most of Gu Xuanji's attacks would be blocked. But heaven knew that after his King's Eye was activated, it actually had an automatic mechanism to protect its clone, and had directly wrapped him up in spirit armor. He was indeed thinking. He was thinking about how to cancel the spirit armor. Chapter 867. Wang Ling was well aware that if he couldn't deactivate the spirit armor, this battle wouldn't continue. Gu Xuanji was very strong, but no matter what, he couldn't break through the King's Eye's absolute defense. But to be able to force the King's Eye to activate the spirit armor's absolute defense, Gu Xuanji's strength indeed couldn't be underestimated. In previous battles, no one had ever been able to do this. Even Wang Ling himself didn't know that the spirit armor would automatically activate when the King's Eye thought that its clone might be in danger. So how to deactivate it was the problem Wang Ling now faced. After studying it for several dozen seconds, Wang Ling decided to give up. He decided to use a more convenient method. Thus, he opened the Mission Manager in his mind, selected King's Eye and all the expansion options under the King's Eye, and then End Program. In almost an instant, the spiritual armor was deactivated. This was a very efficient method, and Wang Ling often did it when deactivating certain spells. Of course, there were some spells that had a time limit, such as the Great Fortune spell, which couldn't be deactivated after it was activated, and could only be deactivated after the activation time was up. But, it was finally deactivated. Wang Ling heaved a long sigh of relief. When all was said and done, the other party was a dedicated keeper of order. In the end, even the spiritual armor could not be broken. As a keeper of order, how desperate must the other party be? As a kind person, Wang Ling felt that he should be more considerate of others. Deactivated the spirit armor. Gu Xuanji saw that the armor wrapped around the youngster's body had disappeared. He couldn't help showing an unhappy expression. Was this a provocation? Or was he simply looking down on him? Gu Xuanji was a little annoyed. He had fought so many experts in the universe, but no one had ever shown him this kind of attitude. He had once defeated a giant fatty with incredibly thick arms, who liked to wear gloves studded with non-mainstream gems, and whose chin was wrinkled like a tray of soup dumplings. He had once defeated a person with 2 pointy ears and a purple body that looked like an alien kangaroo. That person also had a follower by his side. At that time, Gu Xuanji had single-handedly fought against 2 people. He had also defeated a muscular brother who liked to wield an electric hammer, and who had a younger brother surnamed Luo. Although his younger brother wasn't his biological son, this muscular brother doted on him very much. At that time, this brother had raised an electric hammer called Wang Dachui and caused him a lot of trouble, but in the end, Gu Xuanji still won the match. When they shook hands, Brother Gui finally said his name. He said that his name was a single character, Xia. He traveled the universe, maintained order, and defeated countless experts, but in this battle with Wang Ling. But it gave him a completely different feeling. I'm going to get serious. He stared at Wang Ling. In the next moment, an overwhelming spiritual pressure came crashing down, shaking the entire heavenly Tao space. Ripples spread out in the heavenly Tao space, and endless cracks spread out like a spider web. Wang Ling narrowed his eyes, unperturbed as usual. A few golden leaves flew out from the gaps in the heavenly Tao space. Then, they spun rapidly and turned into blades that swept over from all directions. Wang Ling stretched out his hand and made a circle in the air to create a barrier. However, these endless golden leaves actually cut right through his barrier. This barrier was created by Heavenly Tao, and Wang Ling hadn't expected these golden leaves to be able to cut through Heavenly Tao. Wang Ling had no choice but to use his body movements to dodge. After all, if these leaves cut his face, he didn't know if there would be blood, but they would definitely peel off a bit of skin. The 6 great Heavenly Tao turned pale with fright at this scene. They were astonished at the origin of these golden leaves. The golden leaves of the cosmic god tree. Strength Heavenly Tao was dazed. Gu Xuanji even has a godly object like this? Cosmic God Tree. Rumor had it that this was a tree at the very center of the universe. Every leaf on it contained the truth of Heavenly Tao. Strength Heavenly Tao never expected that not only would Gu Xuanji have its leaves, he would also refine them into a magic treasure. Encountering the Cosmic God Tree is already an amazing fortuitous encounter. This tree is at the very center of the universe, and there aren't many people who can find it. It was as if a beautiful picture of the universe had appeared in time Heavenly Tao's eyes, and it was as if he was looking at the long history of the cosmic God tree. Time Heavenly Tao opened its palm, and a magnificent and massive divine tree with golden leaves like a phoenix rising from the ashes appeared in its palm. This was a miniature image of the cosmic God tree. However, this was exactly what the cosmic God tree currently looked like, and a strong aura of the truth of Heavenly Tao washed over them. The 6 great Heavenly Tao were all deeply shaken. If it wasn't for Gu Xuanji, it had already been a very long time since they had observed the cosmic God tree grow. They were shocked because the cosmic God tree was now almost fully grown. Strength Heavenly Tao sighed. I remember that the cosmic God tree was just a small sapling back then. I never thought that in the blink of an eye, it would actually become so valiant and spirited. I'm a little curious about its growth. Time Heavenly Tao recorded the history of the universe, so it naturally knew about the cosmic God tree's origin. As the scene changed rapidly, the magnificent, sky-reaching tree in Time Heavenly Tao's palm also returned to its sapling appearance. 1,280 times the speed. Time Heavenly Tao spun the time wheel. In the scene, the cosmic god tree started to grow rapidly from its sapling stage. About 8,000 years ago, the cosmic god tree was still a sapling. The first fated person passed by. This person is Spirit Heavenly Tao asked. Celestial Monarch Gu Yuan. In other words, Gu Cheng's father and Gu Xuanji's grandfather, Time Heavenly Tao said. I didn't expect the first fated person to also have a connection to the Gu family. Strength Heavenly Tao said. Everyone stared at this celestial monarch Gu Yuan. When he arrived in front of the cosmic god tree sapling, he actually looked overjoyed. Just as the six great heavenly Tao thought celestial monarch Gu Yuan was about to worship him, they saw him unbuckle his belt confidently. Damn! I'm suffocating. After a few seconds, a string of golden liquid was poured over the sapling. The six great heavenly Tao. After that, the cosmic god tree grew from a sapling into a small tree. After that, about 6,000 years ago, another evil person, oh, no, another Tao master powerhouse passed by fate. He also left behind fertilizer that he had accumulated for a long time on the cosmic god tree. The cosmic god tree grew up again. Chapter 868. There was a small sapling of the cosmic god tree at the center of each of the 10 universes, but only Universe 7's cosmic god tree was the strongest of the 10 universes. All of this had gotten out of hand when Star Sovereign Gu Yuan, Gu Cheng's father and Gu Xuanji's grandfather, had peed 8,000 years ago. After that, 6,000 years, 5,000 years, 4,000 years, as the cosmic god tree at the center of Universe 7, more and more fated people visited it. The most frightening thing was that these people were either Tao masters or Tao gods. They traveled the universe on their own, but couldn't find a place to pee. It contained their primordial qi, which couldn't be casually leaked out. It was very impolite to pee anywhere you wanted. Thus, Universe 7's cosmic god tree became a transit point for this group of bigwigs as they traveled the universe, playing the role of a highway rest stop. But reality proved that the bigwig's holy water was indeed extremely nutritious, and allowed the cosmic god tree to grow unprecedentedly strong. Look! His Excellency Ling's barrier is about to break. On this side, the six great heavenly Tao had just finished reviewing the cosmic god tree's history when Strength Heavenly Tao suddenly cried out in alarm. Under the utterly stupefied gazes of the six great heavenly Tao, those golden leaves, which were as thin as cicadas' wings, exerted tremendous power in front of the barrier. The spinning golden leaves were like the deadly gears in Saw, cutting the barrier that Wang Ling's serious clone had created to pieces. There weren't any powerful light effects, and these spinning golden leaves didn't even ripple in the slightest. However, he used his own tenacious strength to forcibly cut open the barrier. Wang Ling frowned inwardly. No one could see the attack process of these spinning golden leaves, but he could see it clearly with his king's eye's dynamic vision. The cosmic god tree's golden leaves shattered and regenerated on one side to complete this attack. The leaves themselves couldn't withstand the powerful density of the barrier at all. They shattered, but with their powerful vitality, they regenerated and completed the glorious mission of cutting open the barrier. They actually broke His Excellency Ling's barrier. Strength Heavenly Tao Sked. This is the first time I've seen someone break His Excellency Ling's barrier. It looks like this cosmic god tree leaf is indeed extraordinary. Since the cosmic god tree acknowledged Gu Xuanji's identity and allowed him to use its power, it seems that there is indeed a reason why Gu Xuanji could become the keeper of order in the three universes and rank first in fighting strength among them. Time Heavenly Tao also nodded. Gu Xuanji's performance was really good. We can give him a little red flower. As he spoke, Gu Xuanji spread open his slender fingers, and all the golden leaves of the cosmic god tree were summoned back. As if they had a mind of their own, the 7 golden leaves turned into 7 balls of light that hovered between his fingers. How about it? Am I qualified enough to be your opponent? Gu Xuanji stared at Wang Ling and narrowed his eyes. To be honest, this golden leaf of the cosmic god tree is my trump card. You're the first person I've ever had to use it against an enemy. Wang Ling straightened his expression. He had a feeling that what Gu Xuanji had obtained from the cosmic god tree wasn't just these 7 tenacious golden leaves. As it turned out, Wang Ling's guess was completely accurate. Just as Wang Ling was feeling doubtful, he saw the smile gradually disappear from Gu Xuanji's face, which immediately gave him a signal. Gu Xuanji was going to unleash his real big move. At that moment, Gu Xuanji's aura soared as he formed the seal. The moment the seal was completed, the heavenly Tao space was actually shattered by a force. Right after that, Wang Ling and the 6 great heavenly Tao saw golden branches extend out of the cracks in the space. Branches of the cosmic god tree. The 6 great heavenly Tao were utterly shocked. They should have thought of this earlier. The 7 golden leaves of the cosmic god tree definitely weren't Gu Xuanji's only trump card. Not only had Gu Xuanji obtained the cosmic god tree's acknowledgement, he had also become its spirit master. Those seals that Gu Xuanji had used just now were none other than psychic seals. He had psychically summoned the cosmic god tree. As the most powerful divine tree in the universe, the moment the cosmic god tree appeared, it was as if the entire battlefield had tilted in Gu Xuanji's favor. Terrifying golden branches extended out of the cracks, as if they could extend all the way to the ends of the universe. Even Wang Ling was shaken by this kind of divine aura. It had to be said that Gu Xuanji had indeed given him a great surprise. He was 16 years old this year, and had yet to meet such a powerful person. None of the opponents he had met in the past could be compared to Gu Xuanji in terms of strength. If the 6 great heavenly Tao knew what Wang Ling was thinking at that moment, they would definitely be shocked, because this was already a pretty high evaluation. Gu Xuanji wasn't in a hurry to make a move. He had psychically summoned the cosmic god tree, and had its branches occupy the entire crack in the heavenly Tao space. He had already surrounded Wang Ling. Gu Xuanji stared at Wang Ling confidently. How about it? Is it impressive enough? This time, it's really my trump card. So, do you want to compete with me with your psychic communication technique? If I win, I don't want anything. I just want to know who on earth you are. Gu Xuanji's words caused the entire heavenly Tao space to fall silent for several seconds. The branches of the cosmic god tree were aimed at Wang Ling. As long as Gu Xuanji willed it, these branches would immediately take action and bind Wang Ling. Furthermore, Wang Ling could sense that these branches had a suppressive force, which was similar to Jinka's aura, but Wang Ling was sure that they weren't the same thing. You're very strong. To the surprise of the 6 great heavenly Tao, Wang Ling actually spoke. This wasn't telepathy. This wasn't telepathy. Wang Ling's words almost made Gu Xuanji's legs go weak, because this was the voice of a teenager who was clearly still in the puberty stage. He thought that given Wang Ling's strength, he had to be at least several thousand years old. Logically speaking, some of these big shots would indeed want to maintain their youthful appearance, but in order to highlight their identity as big shots, they would still maintain their adult voices. So in Gu Xuanji's opinion, Wang Ling's teenage voice sounded a little mischievous. But that was to be expected, because like everyone else, Gu Xuanji didn't know Wang Ling's real age. How about it, do you want to compete with me with the psychic spell? Gu Xuanji folded his arms and looked at Wang Ling. I can wait for you, gentleman's agreement. I promise I won't make a move before you use the psychic spell. You seem to be too confident. Wang Ling stared at Gu Xuanji as he spoke a second time. He stretched out his hand and clapped it in the air, and a psychic array instantly appeared. Gu Xuanji was stupefied at this scene. Sealing the psychic spell? What kind of operation was this? He had never seen it before. And the target of the psychic spell was even more shocking to Gu Xuanji. He rubbed his eyes to confirm that he wasn't seeing things. That was a toilet bowl. Chapter 869. Was this a toilet bowl, or was he under an illusion? This was the question that popped up in Gu Xuanji's mind the moment he saw the toilet bowl. He cast the clarity spell on himself several times in a row. Purification spell. High was dead spiritual disco dance spell, 10 years gone sober spell, to confirm that he wasn't seeing things because he had been hit by an illusion spell. That was indeed a white and flawless modern toilet bowl, and the most frightening thing was that it gave off a frightening aura. Furthermore, this aura wasn't the slightest bit weaker than that of the cosmic god tree. In fact, before Lord Ma had been summoned here, Wang Ling had already enlightened him a second time. Lord Ma, who had now been summoned, was already the most powerful of all the enlightened gremlins in the Wang family's small villa. Second only to Lord Ma was Book of Sage Immortal Paid. But Book of Sage Immortal wasn't a gremlin who had been enlightened a second time. It was only because it had been enlightened later that it had a technical advantage. Wang Ling's ability to enlighten gremlins was also growing every day. The later the gremlins were enlightened, the more powerful they were. In fact, the ability to enlighten could also be superimposed. For example, he could enlighten them a second time. Gremlins who could be enlightened a second time were those who had gained Wang Ling's utmost trust. It could be said that Lord Ma had done a lot of hard work in the Wang family's small villa. Not only had he been responsible for several teleportation missions, he had also currently become an ambassador for the human world and the demon world in order to achieve good communication. If an envoy from the demon world wanted to come to the human world, they had to report to Lord Ma. After presenting demon saints' consent, Lord Ma would specially build a portal. Apart from that, in daily life, Lord Ma also suffered a lot. In order to deal with Father Wang's habit of sitting on the toilet bowl for a long time, Mother Wang had Wang Ming invent the variable temperature toilet, so Father Wang would sometimes sneak into Wang Ling's room to use the toilet. Currently, Lord Ma was the only one who had seen the buttocks of all the men in the Wang family. It was very touching. Hence, Lord Ma had a very high place in Wang Ling's heart. He had thought it over and over again for a long time before asking Lord Ma to come out this time. He thought for a while. Of all his battle strength that could communicate with the spirit, Lord Ma was probably the only one who was worthy of the cosmic god tree. Admittedly, Little Silver and Dog too could also be telepathically summoned, but it was clear that their combat strength was a little lower than that of the cosmic god tree. And now, after being enlightened for the second time, Lord Ma's strength had just reached the standard, which was no small matter. Thus, while he was deep in thought, Lord Ma transformed into his human form. In his human form, Lord Ma was an old man dressed in a white robe with a rather ancient charm. He looked like a scholar and had a scholarly air about him. He was completely different from the sh*t, piss, and fart that everyone had in mind. In fact, this image was also related to the expectations of all living beings towards toilets. If one's own toilet could take on a human form, what would it look like? Ever since the toilet was invented, how many famous scholars were suddenly inspired while squatting on the toilet? They completed one research after another that allowed human culture and scientific research to take another step forward. This was the ladder that allowed humanity to progress. How many innocent young men, in the middle of the night, threw the tissue wrapped in their offspring into the toilet bowl? This was humanity's reflection on reproduction. As a ladder for human progress and a reflection on reproduction, it could be said that Lord Ma's appearance played a decisive role. Every time he thought of this, even Wang Ling himself was moved beyond words. But it was clear that Gu Xuanji didn't understand this action. "You'll pay for underestimating me." Gu Xuanji took a deep breath. His eyes darkened, and he swiftly manipulated the cosmic god tree. As his hands made flower-like hand seals, Gu Xuanji only said 4 words, "Tree world descend." In an instant, the tree branches that were originally densely packed in the heavenly Tao space suddenly moved in unison. They started to spread out in Wang Ling and Lord Ma's direction like earth dragons rising from the ground. "My lord, be careful." Anxious to protect his master, Lord Ma swiftly made a hand seal and threw a cube at Wang Ling, original world, water tank detachment spell. This was a spell that had been transformed from the water tank of the toilet bowl. At that moment, in Lord Ma's hands, it abruptly turned into a silver-white cubic dome that firmly enveloped Wang Ling. The spreading golden branches were firmly blocked outside and couldn't advance another step. It was just a short exchange, but the 6 great heavenly Tao felt a deep stab of pain, because now they finally realized a problem. They seemed to have realized that even a toilet bowl was stronger than them. How could it be cultivated? Lord Ma didn't use any flashy moves, he was completely using the power he had gained after being enlightened to fight. It wasn't that easy for the cosmic god tree's golden branches to catch Lord Ma. It was only at that moment that Gu Xuanji noticed how powerful Lord Ma was. The cosmic god tree's golden branches were about to catch Lord Ma several times, but Lord Ma didn't even budge. His body actually turned invisible in front of everyone, and those golden branches couldn't catch him at all. The power of space, Gu Xuanji could tell. This Lord Ma was proficient in the art of space, and had also mastered the ability to layer space. When faced with a threat, part of his body or all of it could escape into other layers of space, and when the threat was over, he could release his real body again. Gu Xuanji smiled slightly. This was indeed a very powerful ability. But in Gu Xuanji's eyes, the spatial layering spell wasn't a precious spell at all. His chains of order could even penetrate the 3 universes, a mere spatial layering spell was completely subdued by his chains of order. Thus, Gu Xuanji quickly thought of a countermeasure. He once again summoned the chains of order, which pierced through Lord Ma's spatial layering, and used them as a bridge to connect the 2 spaces together. Moreover, the connected space was no longer separated from the inside and the outside. Just like that, Lord Ma's spatial layering spell was cracked. The next moment, the golden branches also firmly grabbed Lord Ma's shoulder. Not good. Lord Ma knew things weren't looking good. Was he going to lose? No, he could still struggle a little. In fact, he still had an ultimate big move against the cosmic god tree that he hadn't released yet, even if he lost. He was going to lose standing up. If he lost without using a big move, that would be too aggrieving. So Lord Ma took a deep breath and opened his mouth wide. The next moment, an endless suction force was generated, and actually formed a storm in the space. With the sound of the toilet flushing, Gu Xuanji finally realized that this Lord Ma's ultimate big move was actually the spatial swallowing spell. At first, Lord Ma hadn't wanted to use this move. Because it was a move with a smell, when the spatial swallowing spell was used, the space passage would be reconnected, and the smell of the filth that had been swallowed in the past would be transmitted directly through his mouth in the other space. Childish. Gu Xuanji laughed again. You want to fight the cosmic god tree with just this level of suction? The cosmic god tree has been at the center of the universe for 1,000 years, and is already used to any spatial fluctuations. In the end, as soon as Gu Xuanji finished speaking, smelling the familiar scent, the cosmic god tree actually stopped restraining Lord Ma at that moment. Indeed, the cosmic god tree hadn't been swallowed by the vortex created by the spatial swallowing spell. But the cosmic god tree, the moment Lord Ma opened his mouth and smelled the familiar scent, it was suddenly hungry, and so, in the next second, the cosmic god tree extended its branch and crawled into Lord Ma's mouth. Wang Ling 1. Chapter 870. Gu Xuanji had lost. He knelt on the ground, looking a little dazed. He had completely lost this battle. The cosmic god tree was already his ultimate trump card. As the most powerful psychic object in his possession, Gu Xuanji never thought that in the end, he wouldn't even be able to deal with a mere toilet bowl spirit. He had completely lost to the youngster in front of him. No matter how you looked at it, the other party had beaten him by too much. Wang Ling walked up to Gu Xuanji and patted him on the shoulder. To be honest, Wang Ling also hadn't expected the cosmic god tree to be drawn away by Lord Ma. He had already been holding back by summoning Lord Ma, because even though Lord Ma had been enlightened a second time, its overall battle strength was still inferior to the cosmic god tree's. In the end, it had turned out to be such an unexpected outcome, but Wang Ling had to admit that Gu Xuanji had already done very well. To be able to force his serious clone to this point definitely wasn't something an ordinary person could do. It could only be said that as expected of the Keeper of Order recognized by the three universes, it's really amazing. But on second thought, Wang Ling felt that it wasn't a good thing to push Gu Xuanji too hard. As a Keeper of Order who maintained the order of the universe, he definitely couldn't be pressured. Wang Ling was worried that this defeat would be a big blow to Gu Xuanji. So after seeing Gu Xuanji's dazed expression, he decided to give him a little reward to comfort him. After all, Gu Xuanji wasn't a bad person, he was the strongest Keeper of Order in the 10 universes. Maintaining order in the universe required hard work even if it wasn't meritorious service. At that moment, Gu Xuanji knelt on the ground with his hands on the ground, his face full of unhappiness. He had thought that this battle would at least end in a draw, and never thought that he would actually lose so miserably. When the youth's well-defined fingers pressed on his shoulder, Gu Xuanji felt as if his entire soul had been shaken. At that moment, Wang Ling saw that Gu Xuanji's eyes were a little excited. Then, the latter firmly grasped Wang Ling's hand, his eyes full of curiosity. "Can you tell me, why are you so strong?" Wang Ling stared at Gu Xuanji with a silent expression on his face. If only he knew why he was so strong, that would be great. Unfortunately, even he himself didn't know why he was so strong. Even the fact that he had mastered the 10 universes and 30,000 great Daos was something he had only found out yesterday. Gu Xuanji was very tired, and so was Wang Ling. Gazing into the sky, he saw that the dome of the heavenly Dao space was a vast sea of stars. He heaved a deep sigh, then turned around and directly disappeared. But before he disappeared, he left behind a reward for Gu Xuanji. This was a packet of enchanted crispy noodle snacks. He was worried that he would regret taking it back, so the moment he left the crispy noodle snacks, he immediately left. Gu Xuanji picked up the crispy noodle snack on the ground with both hands and observed it for a long time, lost in deep thought. At that moment, after Wang Ling left, the 6 great heavenly Dao also surrounded him. "Strength heavenly Dao, young friend Gu, we have a presumptuous request." Gu Xuanji looked up. "Strength heavenly Dao, can you give us the noodles in your hands?" Gu Xuanji understood that the face this senior had left for him was not ordinary. To be able to make even the heavenly Dao fight over it. The truth was that the heavenly Dao had a lot of crispy noodle snacks, but the one in Gu Xuanji's hands was the only one they wanted no matter what. Because the noodles in their hands weren't ordinary, but expired, they couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as the enchanted version in Gu Xuanji's hands. "Gu Xuanji, I'm very sorry, this is something Senior gave me. I don't intend to sell it." The 6 great heavenly Dao sighed. This was the answer they had expected, and they couldn't help feeling a little disappointed. "Strength heavenly Dao, then, can young friend Gu fulfill our other request, Gu Xuanji?" Strength heavenly Dao said seriously, "I want to lick young friend Gu's hand." "Your hand touched His Excellency Ling's just now, right?" Gu Xuanji was frightened. He immediately fled the heavenly Dao space with the crispy noodle snacks. He never thought that the 6 great heavenly Dao of the 7th universe would actually be such a bunch of idiots. "Strength heavenly Dao, young friend Gu. Don't go. I beg you. Let me lick." "No. Just a sniff." "Time heavenly Dao, AI. Don't be reserved at a time like this. We should have pushed him down together just now, then directly lick him and be done with it." "Death heavenly Dao, next time, don't talk nonsense. Just do it." On the way back, he also ate the crispy noodle snacks in his hand, and so, from then on, in this universe, there was another man who was infatuated with crispy noodle snacks. After this man returned to his own time, he was punished by his own father for secretly eating the crispy noodle snacks on the offering table. Meanwhile, Lord Ma and the Cosmic God Tree's game of tag was still going on. The Cosmic God Tree had turned into a human form and was running happily in Lord Ma's world. She was an imaginable tree spirit girl who was full of the divinity of the universe. She wore a golden coat and golden hair, and even her long hair was adorned with dark golden leaves, which looked very pretty. But it was precisely this beautiful young lady who was currently running wildly in Lord Ma's world. Her feet were stepping on the golden, perhaps for many people, this was very disgusting. But for the Cosmic God Tree, It was rare fertilizer. Lord Ma transformed his spiritual consciousness into the inner world and talked to the cosmic god tree. "Miss, please leave, this isn't the place for you." Miss Yu stretched out a branch and sucked up the rich fertilizer on the ground. "I haven't eaten so much in a long time. This place of yours is simply heaven. Only a fool would go out. Miss, this filthy place is just like your identity as a cosmic god tree," Lord Ma advised earnestly. "TSK. I don't care about being some divine tree, people have to live, and so do trees. I'm helping you clean up the filth, you should be thanking me." As she said that, Miss Yu stuck out her branch again and stuck it deep into the ground. Lord Ma blushed. When had he ever been so deeply penetrated? Even his words were trembling. "Miss Yu, you, don't." He had never had such a beautiful girl suck him dry of nutrients. But this Miss Yu didn't listen to his advice at all. The cosmic god tree's branch took root deep in Lord Ma's inner world and sucked in big mouthfuls of nutrients. "You." Lord Ma clenched his teeth. "You men are all pig trotters. You should be very comfortable, right?" "Ah. No. I can't." "Miss Yu, stop." Miss Yu sucked in a few more mouthfuls, then let out a satisfied burp. The color of her golden branch became even brighter. Baidu search 881 Chinese network yen. No advertising words. Chapter 871. Lord Ma wanted to cry but had no tears. As a toilet, he had conscientiously guarded the built-in toilet in Wang Ling's bedroom for so many years. Although he had seen the buttocks of all the men in the Wang family, he had never been so deeply violated, but this Miss Yu was clearly unaware of this problem. She happily wandered around Lord Ma's inner world, grinning from ear to ear. The branches that extended out from behind her sucked up the nutrients under her feet in large gulps, as if she was walking on a golden beach of delicacies. "Miss Yu, really, stop messing around." Lord Ma couldn't take it anymore. His legs felt like jelly, and he almost couldn't stand. He could only blame this Miss Yu's suction force for being too strong. He had been a toilet for so many years and sucked in countless things. Lord Ma didn't think he was a match for her in terms of suction force. But when he bumped into this Miss Yu today, he realized that he was still too young. It could only be said that Miss Yu was Miss Yu in the end. As a tree spirit derived from the cosmic god tree of Universe 7, from the moment it had been watered as a small sapling, Miss Yu had used her powerful ability to absorb nutrients to grow to this stage. It was no wonder that this Miss Yu was the most well-developed cosmic god tree among the 10 universes. When the cosmic god trees of other universes had just produced a door and sword, this Miss Yu of Universe 7 had already successfully produced a set of 6 godly equipment. The cosmic god tree ran in front and Lord Ma chased after it. When Lord Ma was so weak that he couldn't run anymore, Miss Yu finally stopped and firmly grasped Lord Ma's hand. "You're a toilet and I'm a tree spirit, we're a match made in heaven." Lord Ma was startled. There was actually a connection between the two. "I don't care. Ever since I started following Gu Xuanji, he hasn't fed me enough once. Although the quality of the fertilizer in your space is uneven, at least the quantity wins." Miss Yu praised. Lord Ma, however, wasn't happy at all. Speaking of Gu Xuanji, Lord Ma was suddenly a little curious. "If I may be so bold, Miss Yu, why did you choose to be with this Mr. Gu back then?" Miss Yu smiled a little shyly. "So many people peed on me, and they directly treated me as a public toilet. Later, I realized that Gu Xuanji's fertilizer was exceptionally good, so I decided to follow him. But it took him a month to excrete, which really made me anxious." Lord Ma, cultivators with high realms could control their metabolism, and a cosmic keeper like Gu Xuanji would often forget to go to the toilet because he was too busy. But for some reason, Lord Ma could hear a hint of coquettishness in Miss Yu's words. "Miss Yu, if you don't mind, can I also sign a contract with you?" Lord Ma was shocked. "You and me? I'm just an enlightened monster." Miss Yu bit her finger. "What does that have to do with me?" I only know that you're a master who can feed me until I'm full. Moreover, this space of yours has an endless stream of excrement, which saves me the trouble of looking for food everywhere. Lord Ma took a deep breath. Miss Yu, you mustn't. If you want to sign a contract with me, you have to terminate it first, right? Miss Yu said, if you want to terminate the contract, then so be it. What's the big deal? Lord Ma broke out in a cold sweat. He could only quickly come up with an excuse. That's even worse. If my master blames me, I'll return to my original form. Miss Yu, you might not be able to find me in this lifetime. Miss Yu sighed. Your master is really strict. But it should be fine to ask your master to make an exception, right? What does your master like? I'll go give him a gift. Lord Ma's crispy noodle snacks, that's easy. After saying that, Miss Yu's gaze started to wander around under her feet. Lord Ma, what are you looking for, Miss Yu? There's no crispy noodle snacks in poop. Who said that? Miss Yu then picked up a pile of poop. Look, this pile of poop is transformed from crispy noodle snacks. Other people can't tell, but I can see it with one glance. These things are filthy in your eyes, but in my eyes, they're what they looked like before they became poop. Lord Ma turned pale with shock. What kind of damn ability was this? After saying that, Miss Yu started to point out other poop. Look, that big pile is transformed from spicy hot pot. And that pile looks very fresh, it's transformed from fruit salad. And, that's braised chicken and rice, overlord macaron, 6-layer beef burger, whole lamb, steamed bear's paw, whole reed, roasted flour duck, roasted goose, saucy pig, saucy duck, saucy chicken, saucy pork belly. Lord Ma. It was Saturday, August 19th. It was the 6th day of the summer vacation. A very familiar patient came to Immortal Toya's Chrysanthemum Island. This person was none other than Li Diao. Since the last time he had been forced to eat crispy noodle snacks, Wang Ling had enchanted a bacterium in passing. Li Diao's diarrhea hadn't stopped, and his body was about to collapse. His son Li Hao had already been kicked out of school, and he had received a tip-off that the school board was planning to deport them to the Vampire Management Center in Lixiu Nation. Thus, Li Diao took Li Hao and fled Songhai City that very night, and thought of a way to get to Chrysanthemum Island. When Immortal Toya saw Li Diao, he was extremely haggard and didn't look like a teenager at all, he looked like a zombie. On the side, the muscular Li Hao dropped to his knees with a thud. Immortal. I beg you. Save my father. We have nowhere else to go now, we can only come to you. Immortal Toya initially didn't want to get involved in this trivial matter. After all, this was someone Ling Jinren had blacklisted, but a doctor had a benevolent heart. Looking at Li Diao's painful and miserable diarrhea, Immortal Toya couldn't bring himself to do it. If he didn't do anything, Li Diao might very well die from diarrhea. Is your father still having diarrhea? Immortal Toya asked. He's wearing an anal plug now, but it's actually very uncomfortable. As his son, Li Hao replied, Li Diao already couldn't speak at all. Even when they were on the island, Li Hao had to carry him on his back. I might not be able to cure your father, but I might be able to alleviate some of his pain. Immortal Toya stared deeply at Li Diao and sighed. Li Hao lowered his head. I'm very sorry about the school. Immortal Toya looked at Li Hao. It seems you still don't understand. The reason why you and your father ended up like this has nothing to do with the school at all. After saying that, Immortal Toya wrote 3 letters in the air and said, carry your father on your back, then comprehend it yourself. Li Hao stared at these 3 English letters with a stupefied expression. G. C. M. What did that mean? Aisheng Mobile Reading Address. Chapter 872. Li Hao knew that they had come looking for Immortal Toya because they really were at the end of the line and had nowhere else to go. Immortal Toya was famous in the circle for being a good person. Although he had made it clear on the public platform that he wanted to cut ties with DG High School, the only person Li Hao could think of who could help them in the end was immortal Toya. Li Hao's heart was naturally filled with regret. He would never have thought that his cheap mouth on Tiaba back then would actually cause him and his father to fall into such a predicament overnight. Li Hao had initially thought that the worst-case scenario would be for them to return home to Lishio Nation. However, he never expected that the other board members of DG High School would actually abandon them as chess pieces in order to preserve the last bit of DG High School's reputation. They were now wanted by Lishio Nation's Vampire Management Association. As soon as they landed, they would immediately be put under the control of the association. In the truest sense, they couldn't return home. GCM, carrying his father on his back, Li Hao pondered what on earth these three letters meant. Immortal Toya had given them this hint when they were at the end of the line. This definitely wasn't nonsense. Perhaps this was the only way to save him and his father. But Li Hao still didn't understand what these three English letters meant. Li Hao followed Immortal Toya all the way to the island. At that moment, Li Diao's unusually distressed voice suddenly rang out. Li Hao turned his face slightly. What's wrong, father? I can't take it anymore. Li Diao's voice was unusually pained. In order to prevent continuous diarrhea, he had plugged his anus and held it in until now, and couldn't take it anymore. Father, we're almost there. Bear with it a little longer. Cold sweat trickled down Li Hao's face as he quickened his pace. But in the next moment, Immortal Toya heard a loud rumble. When he turned his head, he saw Li Hao, who was carrying Li Diao on his back, actually take off on the spot and fly forward as if he was carrying a rocket propeller. Kami, Immortal Toya couldn't help swearing at this scene, and he hurriedly flew into the air to avoid it. But under the effect of this powerful propelling force, Li Hao continued to advance triumphantly. Finally, he charged all the way to the horizon. By the time Li Hao and his son landed on the ground, half an hour had already passed. Jin Shi and Yin Shi wore masks and cleaned up the filth on the island with purification talismans. During this period, Immortal Toya had also found an emergency plan for Li Diao that could temporarily relieve his pain. Immortal means. Li Hao looked at Immortal Toya's diagnosis report. In fact, he couldn't understand the words on the diagnosis report at all, because it was really too illegible. It was much better than the medical diagnoses written by the doctors in the hospital. Moreover, it was even more sloppy. If the hospital doctor's handwriting could be said to be sloppy, then Immortal Toya's handwriting was basically a mosaic of a sweater. Oh right, it's not like I don't understand it at all. Li Hao saw a string of numbers, 365 million, but it wasn't that he didn't know what it meant. At this time, Jin Shi suddenly said, if you don't understand, then just say it. If you don't say it, who knows if you don't understand? Li Hao, then, Jin Shi took off his gloves and directly took the diagnosis report, translating it for Li Hao. Lord Shifu writes very clearly. Fight poison with poison, do you understand? Later, Shifu will write a prescription for your father based on this diagnosis. It's a powerful laxative, but it has the ability to clean the intestines and purify toxins. Shifu's diagnosis is that your father's condition is caused by an intestinal bacterial infection. Fight poison with poison. Li Hao was blank. Currently, this is the only way to save your father. Jin Shi said, but it's also risky. Your father might have diarrhea and die on the toilet. The mortality rate is about 28%, you have to understand. Apart from this method, there's currently no other way to save your father. The bacteria in your father's intestines are a kind of superbacteria, which is quite powerful. After taking the diagnosis report back from Jin Shi, Li Hao fell into a long silence. This was a very difficult choice. But Li Hao was also well aware that there was currently no one who could help them except Immortal Toya. I believe in Immortal's medical skills, I'll sign. In the end, Li Hao signed. Jin Shi nodded. He couldn't tell that Li Hao was a filial son, and then he took out a pose machine from his storage ring. The medical fee is 356 million yuan. Li Hao was shocked when he swiped his card. It's really expensive. Isn't it written in the diagnosis report? You should be able to read numbers, right? Said Jin Shi. Li Hao. So that was what that string of numbers meant. But the problem was that Li Hao and his father didn't have that much money at all. To come up with more than 350 million yuan, they would have to sell off several of their properties in Lixiu Nation before they could just barely make up that amount. I only have 50 million yuan in pocket money right now, can I pay part of it first, and the rest in installments? Li Hao said weakly. Sure, it's more important to save a life. We're not demons. Everyone has their own difficulties, it's understandable. Jin Shi said in a very experienced manner. On the side, Immortal Toya was already stupefied. He felt that since Jin Shi had entered the city the last time, Jin Shi's sales ability had simply skyrocketed. After paying, Jin Shi and Yin Shi started to prepare the medicine according to their Shifu Immortal Toya's prescription. At that moment, Li Hao supported his father as he followed Immortal Toya to the island's toilet. This was Immortal Toya's own toilet, which he generally didn't let outsiders use. However, he hadn't expected Li Diao's diarrhea to be so serious, so he could only open up his own toilet. That was because an ordinary toilet clearly couldn't withstand Li Diao's impact. An Immortal Toya's own toilet. This was actually something that Wang Ling had personally enlightened. This was Lord Ma too. But it was different from the real Lord Ma. Lord Ma too didn't have its own intelligence. It was just more sturdy than an ordinary toilet. Furthermore, Lord Ma too's internal space was connected to Lord Ma. At the same time, the real Lord Ma, who was still negotiating with Miss Yu of the Cosmic God Tree, saw at that moment that a black hole had suddenly appeared in the internal space, and countless fresh goods poured out. Miss Yu, this person should be a vampire, right? Lord Ma was startled. This, you can tell. Miss Yu pointed at the pile of fresh goods. Type A, Type B, Type AB, and Type O, Lord Ma. At that moment, Miss Yu suddenly cried out in alarm. Oh no! Lord Ma, what's wrong? Miss Yu, this person. I'm afraid he's been infected. There's poison in his poop. Chapter 873. Lord Ma realized that this author had been a bit out of his mind recently. He had finally made an appearance, but in the end, all the plots related to him were related to shit or poisonous shit. As a very principled toilet, even if Lord Ma thought he had a lot of complicated feelings toward butts, he deeply believed that his life as a horse shouldn't be like this. At that moment, Miss Yu had an extremely complicated expression in her eyes. The new lump of goods that had just fallen made her very uneasy. Lord Ma, do you have a way to get rid of these things? They're very bad. Miss Yu, what do you mean? Lord Ma stared at this lump of new goods. Apart from the fact that it was a little black and sticky, it was no different from the other old goods of various shapes and sizes. After all, in this space, there were all sorts of strange shapes and sizes. Some were long, some were sticky. In fact, it's not the thing itself that's bad, but what's inside it. You need a certain level of ocular power to see it. As she spoke, Miss Yu's golden centipede shone with an incredibly bright light. I'm sure that there's something wrong with it, is that so? Lord Ma also used his ocular power, and his pupils emitted a dark brown light. It was different from Miss Yu's Eye of the Universe, which was an ability unique to the Cosmic God Tree. It sounded like a very domineering name, but in fact had a lot to do with the power of nature, so Centipede's ranking probably wasn't that high. On the other hand, Lord Ma's centipede was called the Eye of No Beginning. This name was a homonym of a certain word, and Lord Ma had forcibly changed it to sound more high-end. Lord Ma's centipede had the ability to purify. When Miss Yu mentioned that there was something wrong with the new lump of goods, Lord Ma used his centipede to scan it. Sure enough, he found that there were some strange red strips in the new goods. They were wriggling like worms. It should be bacteria, that's not right, can bacteria be so big? Lord Ma was startled. Lord Ma's space naturally also contains bacteria, but these bacteria are abnormal and clearly different. They have to be purified quickly. Lord Ma. Miss Yu realized the seriousness of the problem. These bacteria are fighting with me for food. Lord Ma was taken aback. He immediately activated his art of no beginning. When the dark brown light shone on the bacteria, it could be seen that the bacteria were writhing in pain. Some of the bacteria were killed, but Lord Ma also discovered that his purification power couldn't solve the problem. This was because the bacteria were absorbing nutrients from the feces in his space while reproducing at an incomparably fast speed. His purifying power couldn't outrun their reproduction speed. Most importantly, Lord Ma noticed that the bacteria seemed to be getting bigger and bigger. This was no longer bacteria. Lord Ma did not want to admit it. How could bacteria grow to the size of a crab stick? Moreover, the latter's body was still growing with the nourishment. Lord Ma began to panic and broke out in a cold sweat. Miss Yu. What should we do? This was out of Lord Ma's expectations. He didn't expect such a dangerous thing to fall into his space. However, Lord Ma was very clear about the origin of this dangerous bacteria. The source of all this was that bacteria which his little master had casually enchanted back then, but perhaps even little Master Ling himself hadn't expected that the enchanted bacteria would actually start to reproduce faster in Li Diao's body, and he would even expel some of them. Miss Yu frowned. We have to move space. We have to destroy this thing completely. It's too dangerous. Miss Yu stretched out her branches and joined in the firefighting operation. Lord Ma, Miss Yu, what do you think? Miss Yu, I'm going to use my spatial power to move this thing into outer space. In space, this thing will be frozen very quickly. I can kill it once and for all. Lord Ma breathed nervously and was a little nervous. There was no doubt that Miss Yu was stronger than him. Furthermore, Miss Yu indeed had her own unique technique for manipulating the power of space. But the question was, would things really go so smoothly? This was a super bacteria that had been enchanted. Furthermore, Lord Ma realized that among all the gremlins that little Master Ling had enchanted, this was the only gremlin that could actually reproduce and upgrade on its own. Lord Ma was utterly shocked. At that moment, Miss Yu opened up the space again. She used the branches as a bridge for the bacteria to climb onto her body, and finally connected the other end of the branches to outer space. Miss Yu, it's fine. These bacteria have infected my branches, so I can cut them off at any time. I won't feel any pain. Miss Yu's expression was very serious. Lord Ma was moved by Miss Yu's spirit. Even the legend of Buddha cutting off his own flesh to feed eagles couldn't compare to this. In order to exterminate this terrible bacteria, Miss Yu was actually willing to sacrifice her own body. What kind of fearless spirit was this? Lord Ma realized that he was actually a little teary-eyed. He felt that he might have misunderstood this unreasonable girl, or perhaps he was a little prejudiced against her. It seemed that the other party hadn't just gone deep into his inner space to eat and drink, she had indeed helped him a lot. Like maggots, the red bacteria crawled onto the branches of the cosmic god tree. Miss Yu waited patiently. Seizing the opportunity to confirm that all the bacteria had climbed onto her body, she sent them into outer space, and then directly cut off the entire branch. After successfully sending the bacteria into space, Miss Yu and Lord Ma breathed a sigh of relief. Lord Ma was overjoyed. Thank you, Miss Yu. You're welcome. Miss Yu clapped her hands. If these bacteria stay here, they'll easily damage other food and ruin my appetite for delicious food. Lord Ma, saying this, Miss Yu waved her hand and opened the space mirror. She was checking to see if the abnormal bacteria she had just sent out had frozen. However, what happened next was far beyond Miss Yu's expectations. The abnormal bacteria, which should have already been frozen, actually broke through the ice. The largest bacterium had already grown to the size of a baby, and even had limbs. Miss Yu turned pale with fright. It even swallowed the nutrients in my branches. Damned E. coli. In the space, the largest abnormal bacterium cackled coldly. Thank you for your guidance. I am the king of bacteria kings. You can also call me Lord Fungus. Lord Ma and Miss Yu had never expected that not only would this Lord Fungus grow its own limbs and gain sentience, it would even snatch away their spatial abilities. After leaving behind these words, Lord Fungus directly opened up a spatial hole and disappeared into it. Although he was an enlightened bacterium, he couldn't stay outside for a long time, and had to find a suitable host. Chapter 874. The enlightened E. coli had turned into Lord Fungus, and it had the terrifying ability to level up, devour, and reproduce. Lord Ma knew very well that the reason his Eye of No Beginning didn't work wasn't because of the Eye of No Beginning, but because the latter's reproduction ability was simply too powerful. This Lord Fungus very cleverly made use of its reproductive characteristics, constantly multiplying small E. coli around its mother's body to form a bacterial armor. It was like an orange that could never be completely peeled. You could never get rid of the flesh inside, and that was the most annoying part. What Lord Ma and Miss Yu hadn't expected was that Lord Fungus, who had originally planned to rely on the feces in the internal space to evolve, would instead rapidly evolve and obtain spatial abilities after climbing Miss Yu's branch into space. This time, they were really in trouble. Even Miss Yu was at a loss. Is it too late to use hand sanitizer now? Lord Ma broke out in a cold sweat. This Miss Yu was eating in his personal space, yet she was still thinking about washing her hands. She really was a good girl who loved cleanliness. You're eating with your hands, so why the hell are you talking about washing your hands? Miss Yu, can you sense where Lord Fungus is going? In the internal space, Lord Ma used his Eye of No Beginning to observe the various spaces. This was the Eye of No Beginning's second ability, spatial insight. However, this kind of spatial insight had its limits. Lord Ma could only see places with toilets. In this world, every place with a toilet bowl was like an ice stone to Lord Ma. Lord Ma could use the toilets scattered all over the world as an ice stone to observe. However, the observation range of each toilet bowl was limited, only 5 meters away. Even if there were many of them, he couldn't actually see much. Moreover, many spaces were dark because many people were using the toilets. If Lord Ma wanted to see the surrounding space, he would have to wait until those people's butts left. There was no way to get a good look. I'm contacting my friends from the Tree Clan to monitor together, Miss Yu said. Miss Yu blamed herself for allowing Lord Fungus to grow. She was also partly responsible for this. When dealing with that E. coli, she had been too idealistic. She hadn't thought about the problems that would arise later on. She should have just ignited her branch and burned the other party along with it. Even bacteria were afraid of high temperatures. But it was too late to say anything now. Lord Ma and Miss Yu were both using their spatial abilities to search for the escaped Lord Fungus. Compared to the limitations of Lord Ma's spatial abilities, Miss Yu's ability to sense her tree tribe companions and search together couldn't be more convenient. But what Lord Ma and Miss Yu didn't know was that Lord Fungus was a very, very cunning person. He went to a place without trees. At that moment, Li Diao was occupying the only VIP toilet on Immortal Toya's Chrysanthemum Island. In order to train Jean Shure's and Yin Shure's leg muscles, as well as to develop good toilet habits, Immortal Toya had installed squat toilets for his 2 disciples. Furthermore, they were equipped with an IFI signal blocker, and there wasn't even an internet connection inside. Since Lord Ma couldn't observe through the occupied toilet bowl, and since Chrysanthemum Island was full of bright chrysanthemums and there wasn't a single tree, it provided Lord Fungus with the perfect opportunity to commit the crime. Lord Fungus was afraid of light and fire, but the chrysanthemums on the island were lush, and the shadow of the sky gave it enough space to move around. The reason why it chose to come to Chrysanthemum Island was because the host it wanted was on this island. That was right, that host wasn't just anyone. It was the island master of Chrysanthemum Island, Immortal Toya. As a pharmacist, Immortal Toya had practiced medicine for 1,000 years and tasted all kinds of herbs. He was now the only descendant of the Toya clan. As a bacterium, under normal circumstances, it absolutely wouldn't look for an experienced pharmacist as a host, especially when the host was highly resistant to poison. It wasn't easy for it to enter the host's body and combine with it. But the situation was different now. It was the new Lord Fungus, and was probably the most powerful E. coli in the universe at present. If it successfully combined with Immortal Toya, it would be able to develop an extremely strong resistance to drugs, and might even be able to develop an immortal ability. Lord Fungus had already decided to give itself a new Taoist name. If this parasitic host operation was successful, it would infect the world and spread it all over the sky. If it didn't come back, it wouldn't come back, Devil Gut Fungus Lord. It had already thought of a Taoist name for itself. Next, it was time to act. While Li Diao was still receiving emergency treatment, Immortal Toya heard the alarm from the chrysanthemum array on the island. Someone had invaded. But who on earth was it? Immortal Toya frowned. Shifu, do you want me to go take a look? Jean Shi asked obediently. Take care of Mr. Li, I'll go take a look. Once Mr. Li's intestines are cleared, follow the previous plan and have him drink the medicine. After that, he'll have diarrhea for 3 days and 3 nights. As long as he can endure it, he'll recover, Immortal Toya replied. Yes, Shifu. Then, Immortal Toya went outside. He stared in the direction of the chrysanthemum array's alarm and frowned. The truth was that he had a very bad feeling, and it was precisely because of this feeling that Immortal Toya had tactfully declined Jean Shi and Yin Shi's invitation to go take a look. Senior Immortal, it seems that my island has been invaded. If I don't reply in 15 minutes, please send someone to take a look. To be on the safe side, Immortal Toya sent grenade-throwing Senior Immortal a text message before he went to take a look. Then, he went deep into the chrysanthemum array. The array under his feet was a top-secret design by his ancestors, and 99% of people who entered it would be lost and lost. With each step he took, the chrysanthemums on the side would constantly shift and change their paths, which had the effect of a dazzling flower. These chrysanthemums had all been specially custom-made, and each one was a full 2 meters tall. Furthermore, the chrysanthemum array had a flight restriction, so it wouldn't be easy to fly over it. Before entering the array, Immortal Toya looked up at the blue sky. The other party hadn't invaded through the air. Thus, he could only go deep into the array and look for the intruder through the location of the alarm. But what Immortal Toya didn't expect was that the intruder wasn't human. It was an enlightened bacterium whose aura couldn't even be sensed. While Immortal Toya was inspecting the array, danger was quietly closing in on him from behind. Chapter 875. Sunday, August 20th. It was the 7th day of the summer vacation. For Wang Ling, summer vacation was supposed to be a leisurely and peaceful one. He didn't have to get up early to go to school, and he didn't even have to do his summer homework himself. It seemed that the only thing he had to do was slack off as he watched a silly TV series on the TV with a pack of iced crispy noodle snacks. But his imagined summer vacation wasn't peaceful at all. It had been a long time since Wang Ling had had an ominous dream. The last time he had had one, he had dreamed that grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was in danger. But this time, he dreamed of Immortal Toya. Unlike the last time he had dreamed of grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, however, Immortal Toya wasn't lying in a pool of blood. Immortal Toya was clearly still alive, but his temperament was completely different. Furthermore, in the dream, Immortal Toya actually abused Jean Shi and Yin Shi. For Immortal Toya, Jean Shi and Yin Shi were like his sons and daughters. Although Immortal Toya had always been very strict with Jean Shi and Yin Shi when it came to alchemy, he would never commit this kind of domestic violence. In his dream, Wang Ling saw that Jean Shi and Yin Shi's eyes were swollen like pandas. This definitely wasn't the work of that scheming woman from Sun Island who had deliberately put on makeup to prove that she had been beaten up by her boyfriend. Wang Ling was ready to go to the island to take a look. But before he set off, he realized that he had missed several missed calls on his wristwatch. All of them were from grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Unlike an ordinary dream, a foreboding dream couldn't be easily interrupted. That was to say, he would enter a state where no one could wake him up until the end of the foreboding dream. It seemed that something had really happened. Wang Ling frowned and quickly sent Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal a message. Brother Ling. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hadn't been able to reach Wang Ling on the phone earlier, and hadn't dared disturb him directly, so he had been waiting in front of his phone. In the end, when he saw Wang Ling's ellipsis, he instantly became excited. Brother Ling, something might have happened to Brother Tu. I was planning to visit his island, and I was a little worried about Jin Shi and Yin Shi. He texted me a few hours ago, but I was at the broccoli farm at the time and didn't notice it right away. In order to better cultivate the heavenly Dao broccoli, Brother Ling knows that there's no signal on our farm to eliminate all radiation. Wang Ling, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, had been very busy recently with the heavenly Dao broccoli. Ever since Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had eaten the heavenly Dao broccoli in front of everyone at the opening ceremony and become a true venerated, the Office of Strategic Deception's heavenly Dao broccoli orders had completely exploded. Currently, all the heavenly Dao broccoli on the breeding farms had been booked out, and there was even a long queue for later orders. Currently, the latest order was already 50 years in the future. Moreover, the time for this order was still increasing. It could be said that the supply could not meet the demand. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal then sent a location. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was currently moving the coordinates. He was still a little far from Immortal Toya's Chrysanthemum Island. It was a pity that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hadn't brought Wuji with him, otherwise he would have been able to reach Chrysanthemum Island in an instant with Wuji's ability to travel through space. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could also use his own strength to open up a space. But he could only move it over a small area. That was because, in the end, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal wasn't a cultivator who specialized in space. Wang Ling had done some research before and found that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was a cultivator with a metal spirit root. This type of cultivator was more resilient and had extremely powerful penetrating spells. They had a special effect on defensive spells that broke through defenses and resisted attacks. Since Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was already on his way, Wang Ling felt that he didn't need to be in such a hurry to get there. Given Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's current realm, an average opponent wouldn't be able to shake him at all. What was more, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal still had the soul suppression ring which Wang Ling had given him. He was a tanky MT warrior who could resurrect infinitely. But while Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's realm and strength had been secretly bestowed by Wang Ling, it wasn't enough to just give him realm without spells. Every famous person had their own signature spells. For example, the old Devil's Chaos Ball. For example, General Yi's Palm Sword. Another example was the recently very popular Six Studies Bible, which was the signature spell of the famous performance artist Teacher Six. Wang Ling remembered that he had specially studied this spell, which allowed a cultivator to directly summon a heroic spirit in the morning hall. It was a pretty remarkable spell. In contrast, it seemed that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't have any more signature spells, if a suicidal spell could be considered a photo spell, but the problem was that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal wasn't Cheyenne. Wang Ling dropped his forehead into his hand and pondered. He was going to give Grenade-throwing a spell that suited his metal spirit root. A few minutes later, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, who was hurrying to Chrysanthemum Island on his sword, suddenly saw a space open up in front of him. Wang Ling took the initiative to stretch out his hand and hand him an exercise book. This was a special exercise book for students that all students used. It was light and convenient, and was mainly used for doing math homework. After Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal opened the exercise book, he was almost blinded by the glittering golden characters in it. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was stupefied. This exercise book actually contained a metal palm technique called Wutian Golden Buddha Palm. Brother Ling, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal put the exercise book away and typed excitedly. This was the first time that Wang Ling had given him a spell, and he didn't know how to thank him in words. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal typed excitedly, "Was this spell collected in an ancient book? I just made it up," Wang Ling replied simply. Just made it up. What version was this? What was the difference between this and a hardcover? When Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal saw these 3 words, he was stunned for a moment. Then, he sucked in a cold breath of air. He finally realized how perverted this spell was. Wang Ling had actually just made it up. Nowadays, could there still be people who could casually make up spells for fun? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had thought that his worldview had been shattered and rebuilt after he had seen Wang Ling spend a few minutes to refine more than 10 holy weapons. In the end, he couldn't help being shaken to the point of shattering once again when he saw this scene in front of him. But that wasn't the most terrifying thing. It was the learning instructions for this Wutian Golden Buddha Palm, because the entire exercise book was filled with golden runes that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't understand. The only thing he could understand were the words, Wutian Golden Buddha Palm, on the first page, as well as the learning instructions below. The contents of the first page went like this: Title, Wutian Golden Buddha Palm, Instruction, please swallow the exercise book, and you will automatically comprehend the spell. Chapter 876. Eating an exercise book would allow one to learn a grade 7 spell. No one else could have imagined this. In fact, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt that it was really a pity to eat this exercise book. Because Wang Ling's handwriting was really too beautiful. This was the first time he had seen Wang Ling's writing, and it was an entire book at that. For people with OCD, the golden characters in this book were simply a blessing. Apart from the title, every character and every rune was the same size, and no matter how complicated the strokes were, they were all square characters. Anyone who got their hands on this kind of exercise book wouldn't be able to resist collecting it. Even if they just opened it and smelled the ink, they would feel like they were very, very close to the heavenly Tao. What a pity. Looking at this exercise book, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sighed in his heart. He couldn't bring himself to do it, but he had to. Because it was indeed as Wang Ling had thought, he currently didn't have a signature spell that he could use. Although he liked to court death in the past, in most situations, he would fight if he could, and if he couldn't, he would throw a skybomb grenade and run. This move, the Wutian Golden Buddha Palm, could make up for the shortcomings of his moves. And so, as Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal rode the brilliant victory sword to Chrysanthemum Island, in the end, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal clenched his teeth and started to tear up the pages of the exercise book before stuffing them into his mouth one by one. But what shocked Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal the most was, Wang Ling had actually added flavor to this exercise book. What kind of freaking exercise book actually had flavor? And it was the black pepper flavor that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was exceptionally familiar with. It looked like Brother Ling might have added a packet of crispy noodle snack seasoning powder to the rune ink. As Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal chewed the pages of the exercise book, he smacked his lips. Unexpectedly, this exercise book tasted pretty good. Perhaps no one could imagine that a cultivator could easily learn a rank 7 spell while riding a sword, and that the speed of learning was so fast that it made one's hair stand on end. Even learning skill books in the game wasn't this convenient. And so, after Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal ate the exercise book in its entirety, for a moment, a golden torrent of spirit energy accumulated in Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's 6 organs. He closed his eyes and discovered that a magnificent golden Buddhist palace had appeared in his dantian. Is this the power of the Wutian Golden Buddha Palm? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was inexplicably shaken as he felt the power of this level 7 spell. He was still flying on his sword, but this terrifying aura had alarmed all the cultivators around him. No matter if they were driving in the air, riding on swords, or passing cultivators on the ground, they all rolled down their windows, stopped, and slowed down. At the same time, they extended their spiritual senses in the direction where the aura was bursting. The passers-by were surprised to find that there was a golden meteor streaking across the sky. Someone rubbed his eyes. This was because they felt that this golden meteor was like a Buddha. At this moment, the situation on Chrysanthemum Island was completely under Devil Gut Fungus Lord's control. He never expected his physical compatibility with Immortal Toya to be so high, and the whole plan had been exceptionally smooth. As a bacterium, he didn't have an aura, which made his sneak attack plan exceptionally smooth. And now, After several hours of settling, he had completely merged with this body. Even the host's own soul had been completely suppressed by him. Jin Shi and Yin Shi, this pair of fellow brother and sister, were facing the biggest crisis Chrysanthemum Island had faced since its establishment. You too, go brew the medicine. Devil Gut Fungus Lord sternly berated Jin Shi and Yin Shi. One of Jin Shi's eyes had already turned into a panda's eye because he had tried to resist before, but to no avail. Furthermore, this Devil Gut Fungus Lord was using their beloved Shifu's body to threaten them. If they didn't obey, Devil Gut Fungus Lord would cut off Immortal Toya's flesh piece by piece. As a bacterium, he didn't feel any pain, and this pain would be directly inflicted on Immortal Toya's soul. Of course, the most miserable people on the island weren't Jin Shi and Yin Shi. Because Devil Gut Fungus Lord still needed them to refine medicine for him. The most miserable people were Li Hao and his father. Li Diao's injuries hadn't healed yet, but he had already become Devil Gut Fungus Lord's test subject. Devil Gut Fungus Lord had Jin Shi and Yin Shi change their prescriptions, and had Li Hao and his father eat countless laxatives. What on earth is your purpose? At that moment, Li Hao and his father were squatting in the vegetable field in the back garden. Devil Gut Fungus Lord even went overboard and didn't let Li Hao go to the toilet. He wasn't even allowed to use the squat toilet, and the two of them had to do it directly in the vegetable field. Li Diao was already completely speechless. He had already been pooping for several days, and at that moment, he had already collapsed in the vegetable field and completely lost consciousness. The only organ that was still functioning was Li Diao's never-ending intestines. Devil Gut Fungus Lord stared at the father and son and smiled slightly. Since I've already chosen to make my debut, I'm bound to cultivate loyal subordinates of my own. When a person has subordinates, they aren't reliable, and there are too many drawbacks. Due to various factors, you'll be disturbed in battle, and can't be considered qualified warriors. But bacteria warriors are different. We are a bunch of emotionless bacteria. Li Hao, I've already let the bacteria multiply in your stomachs, so you need to keep excreting in order to select qualified bacteria warriors. Speaking up to this point, Devil Gut Fungus Lord looked proudly at Li Hao and his father's masterpiece in front of him. There were already tens of thousands of qualified warriors in this vegetable field alone. Then, Devil Gut Fungus Lord produced a purple-black spirit energy and forcefully pushed it inside. The bacteria were actually activated by him and turned into eggshell-like things. Li Hao's trypophobia was about to flare up. Because these eggshell-like things were trembling non-stop, as if something was about to hatch from inside. Elsewhere, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had already rushed to Chrysanthemum Island on the front line. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed it at all that Chrysanthemum Island had actually become like this. At that moment, all the chrysanthemums on Chrysanthemum Island had withered. This was a very strong aura of the evil. Furthermore, it definitely wasn't one of these two species. Now that he was a true venerated, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was very sure about auras. It looked like the guy on this island wasn't simple. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was already ready for battle. For the time being, let's test the waters first, he said in his heart. In the next moment, he raised his hand and slapped the island, and a golden Buddha seal appeared in his palm. Chapter 877. When the blazing golden light of Buddha lit up in the sky, Devil Gut Fungus Lord raised his head. He could already sense that an expert had come to visit. But he wasn't the slightest bit afraid, and just waved his hand to cover the newly produced bacteria on the ground in a purple-black barrier. This light of Buddha was so intense that it had the effect of sterilizing with ultraviolet light. He had to protect his newly produced subordinates. Is an expert here? To be honest, not only wasn't Devil Gut Fungus Lord afraid, he was even a little excited. That was because apart from relying on autonomous evolution, his strength relied more on devouring to obtain direct power. Just by devouring a branch of the cosmic god tree, he had grown a mouth, eyes, and limbs, and had also obtained the ability of space. If he could devour this expert as well, his strength would definitely soar again. But if it came down to it, Devil Gut Fungus Lord had to admit that this expert on the island wouldn't be easy to deal with. The other party's spell was simply his natural nemesis, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that water and fire were incompatible. Furthermore, devouring it was extremely difficult. It was like holding a hot potato in one's mouth. The slightest carelessness could lead to mutual destruction. Devouring was certainly good, but what Devil Gut Fungus Lord wanted to do now was to hold his ground. Gazing at the light of Buddha in the sky, he finally raised his hand and tore open the space above to block the light of Buddha with a spatial crack. At the same time, his body also started to separate. He separated a fist-sized chunk of flesh from his mother's body and turned it into a bug that burrowed into the ground. It wasn't until he was done that Devil Gut Fungus Lord breathed a sigh of relief. Next was a head-on battle. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had used less than 20% of his strength for the first Wutian Golden Buddha Palm. After all, this was a grade 7 spell, which was as destructive as a small-scale city-level spell. If he used too much strength, it was very likely that the entire Chrysanthemum Island would be smashed to smithereens. Now that Jin Shi and Yin Shi were still on the island, he had to hold back a little before he could save them. And the most important thing was that so far, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal still didn't know who on earth had invaded Chrysanthemum Island. Watch out! At that moment, the brilliant Victory Sword under his feet emitted sword chi to help grenade-throwing Senior Immortal avoid a pitch-black laser beam. This was Devil Gut Fungus Lord's ability, Super Bacteria Wave, which had an extremely long range. That was close. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal broke out in a cold sweat. He had been paying attention to the enemy's aura on the island, but he hadn't expected the enemy to actually be someone with no aura at all, so much so that he hadn't anticipated the other party's sneak attack. If it wasn't for the protection of the brilliant martial sword Spirit, he would have been hit by this dangerous attack. Brilliant Victory's Sword Spirit had been awakened by grenade-throwing Senior Immortal after he had advanced to True Venerated. Brilliant Victory had an extremely strong defense to begin with, and this sword spirit was extremely protective of its master. But so far, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had never seen Brilliant Victory's sword spirit. Victorious Martial was a sword spirit that was impregnable, had powerful defensive abilities, and was very homebody. What evil spirit! Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal opened his palm, and the light of Buddha grew brighter. Devil Gut Fungus Lord felt very uncomfortable under the light of Buddha's light, and it was already useless for him to tear open space to block it. Thus, he extracted new bacteria from the bacterial spores that were still multiplying at the bottom, and turned them into a barrier in front of him. These bacteria died the instant the light of Buddha shone on them, but at the same time, the bacteria below continued to multiply, which actually formed a kind of balance. Brother 2, Devil Gut Fungus Lord's appearance also made grenade-throwing Senior Immortal aware of what was happening on Chrysanthemum Island. Although he didn't know how Immortal Toya had been parasitized, he was sure that this evil spirit was inside Immortal Toya's body. A troublesome guy has come. Devil Gut Fungus Lord brushed off the dust on his body. This body is very compatible with me, and your friend and I share this body. How about we each take a step back? I promise I won't do anything to your friend. As long as I fully evolve and have the ability to shape my body, I'll let go of your friend. All three of us can live in harmony and live happily together in this world. Why should I make a deal with an evil spirit like you? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal gripped the brilliant Victory Sword and pointed it at Devil Gut Fungus Lord. Since you chose to parasitize my friend, are you prepared to be punished by my venerable self? Your cultivation is indeed higher than mine, but it won't be that easy to punish me. Devil Gut Fungus Lord sneered. He controlled the constantly multiplying bacteria to gather on his back, and 8 purple-black arms actually sprouted out of bacteria. Then, these 8 arms spread out together. At that moment, Devil Gut Fungus Lord had 10 arms in total. 10 arms, 50 fingers. The next second, the laser beams of the super bacteria wave burst toward grenade-throwing Senior Immortal like a barrage of bullets. The viscous super bacteria wave had an extremely high rate of fire and corrosive ability. Coupled with its super wide attack range, it was now difficult for the brilliant Victory Sword to block such a wide range attack. Because of the superbacteria wave's uniqueness, it was best not to make direct contact with it, even blocking it with a barrier would be self-damaging. Because the superbacteria wave had a sputtering ability, it would be bad if it spread through the barrier and onto a person. Given the current situation, there was already no other way. The only thing grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could think of was to use the Wutian Golden Buddha palm to deal with it. If the island was gone, Immortal Toya would definitely blame him, but it was better than letting these dangerous bacteria spread. Brilliant victory. Take Jin Shi and Yin Shi away. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal spread his arms wide and stood in front of them. The brilliant victory sword under his feet was wrapped in a golden Buddhist light as he charged toward Jin Shi and Yin Shi, skewered the pair of brother and sister like skewers, and directly carried them off the island. At the same time, Immortal Toya put his palms together. How powerful was the Wutian Golden Buddha palm at 100% power? At that moment, the clashing Buddha light actually turned into another shockwave with a distinct color that blasted toward the superbacteria wave. Devil Gut Fungus Lord turned pale with shock. Because he saw a huge virtual image of a golden Buddha appear behind grenade-throwing Senior Immortal at the same time the palm struck. When the palm came, the Buddha statue also struck out. The superbacteria wave covered a wide area, but the moment it came into contact with the Buddha's light, it dissipated into nothingness. All of it was reduced to ashes, leaving not even a single fungus behind. Seeing that the attack was effective, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal smiled. It seems that you, evil spirit, don't understand the law of opposing waves in the cultivation world. Law of opposing waves. Devil Gut Fungus Lord was stunned. Opposing waves. Of course, whoever releases the light wave first loses. Chapter 878. Devil Gut Fungus Lord stepped back. The man in front of him was a little troublesome. He didn't know much about this human world, but Devil Gut Fungus Lord believed that given his strength, he could definitely rank in the top 10 in terms of fighting strength. But the superbacteria wave he had just unleashed had actually been easily dispelled by this man with long black hair and ancient clothing in front of him. The other party's strength was clearly on par with his, or even above his, thus, the only thing Devil Gut Fungus Lord could think of at the moment was to drag the fight out. His strength was based on the number of bacteria in his body. The more new bacteria he produced, the stronger he was. He would continue to grow as time went on. But could he drag things out as smoothly as he thought? That was still a problem. Can we call a truce for a while? Devil Gut Fungus Lord stared at grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Standing in the air, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal also met Devil Gut Fungus Lord's gaze with a fearless expression on his face. You and I both know very well that this is a fight that can be resolved in a minute, or even less. How many more waves of my palm techniques do you think you can withstand? Devil Gut Fungus Lord grit his teeth. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's words were spoken lightly, but they just happened to poke at his sore spot. Indeed, that palm technique, which had the golden light of Buddha and could even condense into a golden Buddha, was very unfriendly to him. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was a natural nemesis. The power of that palm just now had been unstoppable. It had instantly vaporized hundreds of millions of his bacteria and reduced them to cannon fodder. If grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had used a series of palm techniques, he wouldn't have been able to hold on for long. At that moment, Jin Shi and Yin Shi were already stupefied under the protection of their brilliant victory swords in the distance. They had never known that grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could be so powerful. They had heard before that he was already a true venerated expert. Shifu had told them that this was a very rare realm between true immortal and venerated immortal. To advance to true venerated level required great luck. Shifu is being controlled by that evil spirit. Can Senior Immortal really save him? Yin Shi was a little worried. It wasn't that she didn't believe in grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's ability, but that he was too powerful and would destroy their Shifu's body. After all, nowadays, there were often silly news reports about people deciding to kill young girls before they jumped off the building in order to save them. If grenade-throwing senior immortal subordinates weren't careful, this evil invader might destroy their Shifu's body along with it. It was true that the evil spirits had invaded, but they had invaded their master's body. Although there were many ways to reconstruct one's physical body, it was still better to keep one's physical body original. He'll be fine. Your Shifu will also be saved. As grenade-throwing senior immortal sword spirit, Victorious was very confident in its master. He had already activated his defensive sword shield. Sword chi extended from the hilt of his sword, forming a mountain-like sword wall that firmly protected Jin Shi and Yin Shi. The defensive ability of the brilliant victory sword was extremely strong, and it could even withstand a nuclear explosion. Considering the formidable power of the Wutian Golden Buddha Palm, Shen Wu felt that it was necessary to protect Jin Shi and Yin Shi in order to prevent them from getting hurt. This was the mission that grenade throwing had given him. As for Dio and his son, who were still on the island, Brilliant Victory Sword had initially wanted to save them in passing. But both of them were infected with bacteria, and their bodies stank to no end, which made Brilliant Victory Sword flinch at the sight of them. Brilliant Victory Sword could only let these two people pray for their own good luck. On the other side, seeing that Jin Shi and Yin Shi were already completely protected by Brilliant Victory Sword, grenade-throwing senior immortal no longer had any misgivings. As for Dio and his son on the island, they could only pray for their own good luck. Once the battle was over, he would see if he could save them. After all, these two were people whom Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch had singled out to kill, so their priority was definitely far behind Jin Shi and Yin Shi's. It's all over. Grenade-throwing senior immortal stared at Devil Gut Fungus Lord. You wouldn't dare kill me. Devil Gut Fungus Lord laughed savagely. This is your friend's body. If you do anything to me, your friend's body will be the first to suffer. Devil Gut Fungus Lord didn't know the human world very well, but he knew that the price of reconstructing a body was now more expensive than a house. Is that so? Grenade-throwing senior immortal smiled gently. He made another hand seal, and blazing Buddhist light soared into the sky like a miracle with the effect of splitting heaven and earth apart. The golden pillar of light that connected the earth and the sky was like a stabilizing needle, full of deterrence. Behind grenade-throwing senior immortal, the huge illusory golden Buddha appeared once more, and it slowly waved its palm, which seemed to contain countless truths of Buddhism. The golden Buddha palm pushed the pillar of light in front of it, which was directly aimed at Devil Gut Fungus Lord. Buddhist light immobilization. Under this enormous pressure, Devil Gut Fungus Lord was astonished to find that he couldn't move. This person was too vicious. Did he not even care about his brother's body? Devil Gut Fungus Lord never expected grenade-throwing senior immortal to actually be so decisive. He was utterly shocked, and at the same time sensed the threat of death in his heart. This Wutian Golden Buddha palm had the Buddhist pillar immobilization effect. When the palm fell, his soul, his body, and the soul of the owner of this body would instantly be annihilated. If he didn't leave now, it would be too late. Devil Gut Fungus Lord grit his teeth in hatred. You win. In the next moment, countless purple-black worms gushed out of Immortal Toya's pores. This was Devil Gut Fungus Lord's split body, and these worms were made up of the parent bacteria which had been enlightened by Devil Gut Fungus Lord. Grenade-throwing senior immortal had forced him to leave this highly compatible body. At the same time, the moment he left the body, Devil Gut Fungus Lord was bathed in the light of Buddha and suffered excruciating torture. Damn it, it hurt. He felt like his whole body was on fire. The power of the Buddhist light was so strong that it felt like every inch of his body was being gnawed at by a powerful purifying force. In the next second, Devil Gut Fungus Lord's split body directly gnawed out a space, and he controlled all the split bodies to plunge into the space. He was worried that if he stayed too long, even his parent body would be immobilized by the Buddhist light, so he had retreated in time. Seeing that he had successfully forced Devil Gut Fungus Lord out of his body, grenade-throwing senior immortal hurriedly roared at the sky, Brotherling. I know you're watching. Come and help me break my big move. Don't just stand around and watch. My palm will strike down. Brother 2 and Brother 2's island will be gone. As soon as he said that, a space fisher suddenly appeared next to grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's cheek. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal saw a pair of familiar hands. Crack! Then, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt his head hurt. With Wang Ling's great skull-flicking spell, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's big move was successfully interrupted. The golden Buddhist light that filled the sky instantly dissipated. Chapter 879. The Great Skull-Flicking Technique was one of the 3,000 great Daos that could forcefully interrupt all skills. Even heavenly Dao techniques could be interrupted by this technique. If there was a situation where he couldn't stop it, it could only mean that the other party's strength far surpassed his, or that his skull-flicking art was not proficient enough. But with Wang Ling, neither of these two situations would happen. It was just that when he had flicked the skull, he hadn't paid attention to his strength, and seemed to have used a little more force. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's ultimate move had indeed been interrupted, and his head had been sent flying by Wang Ling. It was only when grenade-throwing Senior Immortal relied on the power of the soul suppression ring to reconstruct his body that he realized he had already died. Fortunately, the power of the soul suppression ring had resurrected him. "Brother Ling, sure enough, you're still strong." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was secretly shocked. He didn't even feel anything when he died. He didn't feel any pain at all. When a person was strong to a certain extent, they would be able to do this. A few seconds later, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's body was swiftly reconstructed. His body had already been restored. Jin Shi and Yin Shi saw that grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's severed head had actually turned into a sand-like substance and returned to his head. This pair of siblings didn't know what words to use to express their feelings at this moment. They couldn't help but open their mouths wide. "See, didn't I say that my master could save your master?" Sheng Wu didn't notice Jin Shi and Yin Shi's astonishment at all. He thought that the two of them were still immersed in the joy of their master's rescue. Sheng Wu sighed inwardly. In the end, he was still a junior. His mental endurance was not good enough. After his resurrection, the first thing grenade-throwing Senior Immortal did was to check on Immortal Toya's injuries. He had brought with him a panacea that could quickly recover from injuries, the stretching leg and staring eye pill. The main ingredient in this pill was the extract of heavenly Dao broccoli. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had eaten it himself before, and it had a powerful miraculous effect on recovering from injuries, especially internal injuries. But Immortal Toya was unconscious and couldn't swallow at all. If Wang Ling blew in with artificial respiration, it would seem a little gay. Furthermore, Jin Shi and Yin Shi were also here. It wouldn't be good to affect their image in front of the children. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal thought hard. There was no other way. Tugging off Immortal Toya's clothes, he directly put the pill in Immortal Toya's belly button, and then pressed it in. A few seconds later, Immortal Toya woke up smoothly. The invasion of the evil spirit had caused great damage to his soul, but the stretching legs and staring eyes pill had a miraculous effect, and the damage to his soul was also healed. "Brother Tu, are you alright?" Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal helped Immortal Toya up. "It's alright." Immortal Toya shook his head. The last scene in his memory stopped at the moment when the huge golden Buddha palm pushed the Buddhist pillar and was about to crush him. In that instant, he felt the fear of the evil spirit in his body. Then, the evil spirit slipped away as if it had gone mad. His soul returned to the path of dominating the body. After that, he lost consciousness. When his soul returned to his body, he lost consciousness for a split second. Fortunately, after waking up, Immortal Toya didn't feel any discomfort, except that his clothes had been torn. "It's all destroyed." Sitting on the ground, Immortal Toya sighed. Whether it was the heavenly silkworm treasure robe he was wearing or Chrysanthemum Island, they were all destroyed. His Chrysanthemum Island, such a big island, and so many chrysanthemums on the island. In an instant, he was out of luck. It'll take a lot of time to rebuild it. Immortal Toya sighed. The chrysanthemum array on the island was a legacy left behind by his ancestors, and had to be restored. He didn't want to be nailed to the shame of later generations and be called a wastrel. "Brother Tu, don't worry, I'll send someone over to help rebuild it." With Dharmaraja and Brother Luo around, Brother Dharmaraja's logistics team will be ready at any time, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hadn't expected Chrysanthemum Island to be destroyed to this extent. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Chrysanthemum Island had been plunged into an abyss of misery, as if it had been invaded by pain, smoke and chaos reeked everywhere. They could only blame Devil Gut Fungus Lord for being too contagious. But Immortal Toya and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal were well aware. It wasn't over yet. Because Devil Gut Fungus Lord wasn't dead, and was still at large. Immortal Toya stood up and looked at the mess on Chrysanthemum Island, his body trembling a little. It wasn't because his Taoist robe was in tatters or cold, but because he was angry. Senior Immortal, if it's possible, Brother Tu, I might have saved you, but the person who really saved you was Brother Ling. You don't have to repay me with your body. Senior Immortal, I'm serious. Fine, tell me, I want revenge. Can you give this Devil Gut Fungus Lord to me? This Devil Gut Fungus Lord is extremely strong and cunning. Given Brother Tu's current battle strength, I'm afraid it won't be easy to deal with him. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sighed. I know. Immortal Toya nodded very seriously. But I still want to do it. As he spoke, Immortal Toya opened his palm, which shone with spirit light. In his palm, a beautiful redbud flower appeared. Then, the redbud flower bloomed and an exquisite pagoda appeared. However, the pagoda had already shattered. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal knew that this was the ancestral treasure of Immortal Toya's clan, the 9 Cycles Exquisite Pagoda. Brother Tu, you want to repair the exquisite pagoda? That's right, I think the time has come, Immortal Toya said. The pagoda contains my Immortal Toya clan's internal secrets. These secrets will be a key factor in improving my technique in the future. Unfortunately, the pagoda was already broken long ago. I've been looking for the materials to repair it, and I only managed to collect all of them not long ago. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal broke out in a sweat. So, Brother Tu, you've been collecting materials all this time. He had heard before that the 9 Cycles Exquisite Pagoda had been broken, but Immortal Toya had never mentioned it, so he had thought that the pagoda had already been damaged beyond repair. Immortal Toya nodded. That's right. I've been looking for materials all this time. I've been working hard all these years to save money and buy the materials to repair the pagoda. Wait, Brother Tu, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal interrupted Immortal Toya. Have you asked Brother Ling? I was just about to ask. I heard that Ling Jinren's refining skills are very brilliant. To be on the safe side, I'm already prepared to get down on both knees and beg Ling Jinren to help me repair the pagoda. After all, there's only one set of materials. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Why don't you ask him now? Immortal Toya, now. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal shouted into the air, Brother Ling. I know you're looking. As soon as he said this, a space fissure opened up, and he stretched out his hand again. He just stroked Immortal Toya's exquisite pagoda, all the cracks on the exquisite pagoda disappeared. Immortal Toya, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, you see. Brother Tu doesn't need the materials at all, Immortal Toya was startled. This, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, so, Brother Tu, in the future, you should tell me earlier if you need anything. If you don't, how can you be a koi? Immortal Toya. Chapter 880. Everyone had their own little secrets, and Wang Ling was no exception. Furthermore, he had the habit of writing them down in his diary. This could be considered one of the major characteristics of the Wang family. The old man, Father Wang, Mother Wang, even Loopy Toad, who had just started, had the habit of taking notes. It was true that Loopy Toad had started out writing in the diary to practice its writing, but in the end, it had become a habit. The works of the Wang clan could be forged into a legend. These words were not just empty words. This was a fact that had been verified by history. When Wang Ling was writing in his diary that day, he accidentally flipped to his birthday last year. That day's experience was very magical. December 26, 4395. At that time, Wang Ling and Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal and the others hadn't been as close as they were now. The sexualists hadn't been born yet, the sexualists had controlled the world, the koi fish hadn't been born yet, the immortal king hadn't been animated, calories hadn't been so popular, Chang Dong hadn't been caught. The most beautiful Yuquan hadn't had its wings broken, and the spring breeze of reform hadn't been a hit yet. When the Heavenly Emperor token had awakened, he had looked at the Heavenly Tao Almanac, and on that day, everything had happened because of that almanac. Cultivation Calendar 4395 December 26 Good for weddings and funerals, going out, making friends, studying, working. Don't, snacks. Wang Ling looked down at the crispy noodles in his hand. Although Crispy Noodles hadn't opened the package yet, his hands were already trembling slightly. This Heavenly Tao calendar should be set by the Heavenly Tao, right? No. He wanted to modify it. I can't live without snacks on my birthday. But at that time, his relationship with the six great Heavenly Tao hadn't been that close. Using the Crispy Noodle snacks in his hand, he drew a refinement array and summoned the Heavenly Tao Little Golden Man. The little golden man's hands were also trembling. You. What do you want now? Wang Ling pointed at the almanac, his meaning very clear. The Heavenly Law Ecliptic Calendar. This was decided by yesterday's Heavenly Law Ecliptic Adjudication Assembly. The true decision isn't made by the six great Heavenly Taos, but by the 3,000 Heavenly Taos that comprise the six great Heavenly Taos. Everyone has to vote. I didn't cross out the snacks section. You can't blame me. The little golden man wiped his cold sweat. He knew very well how the little master in front of him looked when she was angry, so he didn't dare to provoke her. Take me back to yesterday. Wang Ling's eyes were fixed on the little golden man as he spoke telepathically. The little golden man opened his mouth. He didn't have the right to refuse the deal at all. He had wanted to ask what Wang Ling was prepared to offer in exchange, but as soon as he opened his mouth, he noticed the crispy noodle snacks in his hand, and his heart instantly froze. As he had expected, this crispy noodle snacks had expired. After a long sigh, the Heavenly Tao Little Golden Man opened the time tunnel leading to yesterday. Without even thinking about it, Wang Ling directly stepped inside. Unlike the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee, the Heavenly Tao Calendar Ruling Assembly was held in a large stadium. When Wang Ling arrived at the entrance of the stadium, he saw many little golden men collecting voting machines at the entrance. When the conference officially began, the voting machines would become an important factor in the almanac. This is the voting machine. Please hold it properly. The golden man's staff in the venue handed the machine to every golden man who entered the venue. It was Wang Ling's turn. This is the voting machine, please. The little golden man looked up. Just as he was about to hand over the voting machine, he realized that it was actually a human. That's not right. How could a human be here? On the side, the little golden man who had brought Wang Ling in hurriedly gave the machine giver a look and said in a low voice, "If you don't want to die, hurry up and give him the machine." Unfortunately, this little golden man was very inflexible. No way. The only ones who can use machines are us Heavenly Tao Little Golden Men. This human absolutely can't use them. He can't even enter the stadium. As soon as he said this, Wang Ling directly stretched out his hand and lightly tapped the little golden man's forehead. Boom. A small mushroom cloud exploded. The little golden man who had given away the voting machine was reduced to flying ash. The golden man who had led the way sighed. AI, this bro, why did he have to do this? The Heavenly Tao wouldn't die, but this little golden man hadn't even been turned to ash by this little mushroom bomb just now. It would probably take a long time for him to recover. Then, Wang Ling took away all the remaining voting machines. The little golden men who were still in line were stupefied, but they didn't dare say anything, and so, 10 minutes later, a miraculous scene played out in the venue of the Heavenly Tao Calendar Adjudication General Assembly. A human teenager split into hundreds of clones, each of whom held a voting machine and were waiting to vote. On the other side, the little golden men whose voting machines had been snatched away huddled together and shivered. After the venue quieted down, the platform in the center of the venue slowly rose, and the 6 great heavenly Tao who were in charge of the meeting arrived. When the 6 great heavenly Tao saw that a human who had snatched away a voting machine was actually sitting in the venue, they were already prepared to suppress him, but when they saw the teenager's face clearly, they withdrew their restless hands. Similarly, they were furious, but didn't dare say anything. Strength Heavenly Tao cleared his throat. Colleagues, today we will be holding the Heavenly Tao Calendar Adjudication General Assembly as per usual. Based on the discussion at the meeting, we will vote on the appropriate and taboo items for tomorrow, December 26th. After saying that, Strength Heavenly Tao looked at Wang Ling and said in a trembling voice, "Next, I will discuss the taboo items for tomorrow. Last night, I observed the celestial phenomena and noticed that the great Emperor's star of Ziwei Star Palace lit up, which is a sign that the soul of a great man is shining. So I especially suggest that we ban an entertainment activity tomorrow." Which one do you think should be banned? Playing games, reading comics, binge-watching dramas, or eating snacks? Please be careful, and vote. Strength Heavenly Tao felt that his hint was already quite obvious. But he didn't think the voting this time would go smoothly, because the Heavenly Tao little golden men's pursuit of appetite could almost be described as non-existent to begin with. Thus, Strength Heavenly Tao already had a bad feeling when it came to voting. Strength Heavenly Tao, brother time, can you adjust the time? I'll take away the snacking item. Time Heavenly Tao, it's too late. Brother Strength. You're too late. Strength Heavenly Tao. As soon as Time Heavenly Tao said that, a series of explosions rang out throughout the venue. For a moment, countless mushroom bombs rose into the air. A few seconds later, only Wang Ling was left in the huge venue, and Wang Ling's clone, the 6 great heavenly Tao, looked at the mushroom clouds rising all over the venue. They were furious, but didn't dare say anything. Chapter 881. Immortal Toya sniffed, feeling a little hopeless. He had worked for so many years, but in the end, a problem that could have been solved with a few packets of crispy noodle snacks had become so troublesome. Not only was it harmful to the body, but it also greatly slowed down the speed of his cultivation. Staring at this flawless and repaired 9 cycles exquisite pagoda in front of him, Immortal Toya's thoughts were a mix of emotions at that moment. It could only be said that Lingjinren was truly Lingjinren. Even such a magic tool could be repaired in an instant. This was simply not something that a normal human could do. Even the 10 generals and General Yi couldn't do this. The 9 revolutions exquisite pagoda was a world-defying magical artifact. To be able to instantly repair world-defying magical artifacts, this was too terrifying. On the other side, Wang Ling, who was in his bedroom, withdrew his hand. Of course, he didn't know how to repair the Dharma artifact. That move just now was just a directional time reversal technique that allowed the 9 reincarnation exquisite pagoda to return to its original state. It wasn't a complete repair. However, the Book of Time Rewind had its limitations. After activating it once, the cooldown time for the second activation was very long. He had once thought of using this method to fix crispy noodle snacks. For example, if he left behind some crispy noodle crumbs, he could use this trick to restore the crispy noodle he had already eaten. However, he had waited for too long, so he could only give up. Of course, he had been more mischievous as a child, and had used this trick as a prank once. That time, Father Wang had deducted his pocket money because Wang Ling had broken his chopsticks, so he had used the time reversal spell to delete all the manuscripts in Father Wang's manuscript storage box. Later that month, because Father Wang hadn't submitted his manuscript, his royalties were extremely low. Wang Ling's pocket money had shrunk again. Although Wang Ling was capable, the Wang family's income came from legitimate work, and most of the family's expenses were supported by Father Wang's royalties. Little Wang Ling didn't know if Father Wang had realized at that time that he had done it. Now that he thought about it carefully, perhaps Father Wang had already discovered it at that time, but after that incident, little Wang Ling, who was only a few years old, understood how difficult it was for his father. From then on, he would never do such a naughty thing again. The pace of life in the Wang family was very slow, and even father and mother Wang took things step by step with their children's education. When it came to educating their children, father and mother Wang never advocated using violence to solve problems. Domestic violence is useless. In fact, the main reason was that they couldn't beat him, even if it was a brawl between husband and wife. Wang Ling's physique was too strong, and if the reaction force was too strong, they might hurt themselves instead. So whenever he made a mistake as a child, father and mother Wang's most common punishment was to make him stand against the wall, deduct his pocket money, ban him from eating crispy noodle snacks and so on. Standing against the wall as a punishment was good for the growth of the lumbar spine and leg muscles, and Wang Ling's sage body had in fact come from standing as a punishment. In front of his desk, Wang Ling's thoughts suddenly drifted back to his childhood. To be honest, if it hadn't been for father and mother Wang's proper guidance from a young age, even Wang Ling himself didn't know what kind of person he would have become. Too much power would often bestow a person with an extreme personality, and the slightest bit of ill intent would cause a person to fall into the abyss. But the good thing was that, although he occasionally had his troubles growing up, he had still been very happy overall. Immortal Toya had used his time reversal spell to repair the 9 cycles exquisite pagoda. But in fact, this was also his compensation. Because he had already secretly spied on the battle between Devil Gut Fungus Lord and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal just now. He hadn't expected the germ he had enlightened to actually run amok. This matter could be considered as his own fault. Thus, after repairing the 9 cycles exquisite pagoda, Wang Ling had been thinking about a plan to get rid of the germs. The germ he had enlightened this time was a little troublesome. Because the gremlins he had enlightened in the past didn't have the ability to grow. Not only could this Devil Gut Fungus Lord grow, it could also devour other people's abilities for its own use. For gremlins that could grow, there was no way to cancel the enlightening mechanism to resolve the crisis this time. What Wang Ling needed to do was completely destroy this Devil Gut Fungus Lord. Help me track its location. Wang Ling spoke telepathically to Book of Sage Immortal on the table. Yes, my lord. Book of Sage Immortal's screen showed traces of a radar scan as it searched for Devil Gut Fungus Lord's location. Although Devil Gut Fungus Lord had devoured the Cosmic God Tree's spatial ability and learned to travel through space, unfortunately, he didn't have the ability to leap out of the universe. As long as Devil Gut Fungus Lord was still in Universe 7, Book of Sage Immortal just needed to rely on its radar search ability to quickly determine his specific location. Found my lord. Dozens of seconds later, Book of Sage Immortal sent a message. According to its location, Devil Gut Fungus Lord has already fled abroad and is currently active in the outskirts of Mishio Nation. Fled abroad? Wang Ling's heart trembled. It looks like my wise lord is already thinking about how to eliminate Devil Gut Fungus Lord, right? I've already thought of 1,000 ways, and I've already analyzed 3 of them, which are definitely what my lord is thinking now. Book of Sage Immortal said, Devil Gut Fungus Lord is active in the outskirts of Mishio Nation. According to my analysis, there's a 78% chance that he'll run into President Bai of Night Chief. When the 2 of them meet, Devil Gut Fungus Lord has a 97% chance of winning. Although Devil Gut Fungus Lord's strength will be greatly enhanced after devouring President Bai, it won't be a threat to my lord at all. Instead, it will help my lord completely eliminate this hidden danger, President Bai. When the time comes, my lord can dispatch a clone to directly eliminate him, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Wang Ling, the second method is a simple and crude one. My lord can directly open up a space to suppress them, but the hidden danger is that there's a high chance that my lord will be noticed by Mishio's secret agents. A lot of people in Mishio are already paying attention to Night Chief, and the FCI is currently investigating. If we ignore Night Chief, there's a 67% chance that they'll be successfully eliminated by the FCI in the future, and a 34% chance that President Bai will die. If my lord directly suppresses them, there's a 1000% chance that Night Chief will be eliminated, a 2000% chance that President Bai will die, and a 3000% chance that Devil Gut Fungus Lord will die, but there's also a 47% chance that FCI will notice them. Wang Ling, the third method is to get someone else to do the dirty work. My lord can dispatch your friend, Immortal Toya, to go abroad and suppress them. With the complete 9 cycles exquisite pagoda, there's a 72% chance that Immortal Toya will be able to eliminate Night Chief, a 68% chance that President Bai will die, and a 54% chance that Devil Gut Fungus Lord will die. The main thing is that with a little help from my lord, you can raise the probability to 100% or even higher. Book of Sage Immortal, looking at my lord's calm expression, I presume my lord has already made a decision. I'm guessing that my lord is definitely thinking of the third method, right? Wang Ling, Genius 1 second remember website URL. Mobile version, M. Chapter 882. For the first time, Wang Ling realized that the gremlin he had enlightened was very dangerous, as the only gremlin in the Wang family's small villa who had been enlightened by the second-generation enlightening spell. Book of Sage Immortal's formidable power was already on full display. Although Lord Ma was still the strongest gremlin in terms of combat ability, Book of Sage Immortal's other abilities were truly astonishing. If it was enlightened a second time like Lord Ma, it might become a cosmic divine weapon. Wang Ling lowered his head as he pondered. He felt that Book of Sage Immortal's ability might be able to benefit the universe. Calculating probabilities was still a little heaven-defying. My lord? Wang Ling, ? Wang Ling had a bold idea. He wanted to send Book of Sage Immortal to another universe. This guy was really too smart. Keeping it by his side might be a huge problem. Seeing that Wang Ling hadn't responded for a long time, Book of Sage Immortal asked again, My lord, what are you thinking about? Before Wang Ling could speak, Book of Sage Immortal continued, I know that your lordship is still thinking about Devil Gut Fungus Lord, and I just calculated that there's an 87% chance that your lordship will choose the third option. Thus, I've already contacted Immortal Toya in advance and sent him a text message in your lordship's tone to have him deal with Devil Gut Fungus Lord. Wang Ling, Book of Sage Immortal, I calculated that there's a 92% chance that a giant tornado will form on the sea tomorrow, which will affect the flight schedule, so I've already helped Immortal Toya buy tickets for the underwater passage. We'll set off this evening and arrive in 2 hours. Because of space restrictions in Mishio Nation, if my lord casually opens a space tunnel to send Immortal Toya over, I'm afraid it will affect relations between the two nations. Also, I bought the tickets for the underwater passage after pawning my lord's crispy noodle snacks. So far, I've already calculated that there's a 99% chance that my lord will smash me. Of course, there's also a 1% chance that I'll be sent to another universe to benefit humans there. But my lord, please stay calm. Because I can already sense that your anger has penetrated the dimension wall and is affecting the world's environment. Wang Ling's heart, a few seconds later, My lord, calm down. I can already sense that your anger is on the verge of erupting. Furthermore, it seems that it has already overflowed the dimension wall and is flowing into another universe. A few seconds later, Wang Ling's heart, for all, my lord. You really shouldn't be impulsive. I know that there is a 99% chance that you want to hit me, but if you get angry, the dimensional wall of Universe 10 will break even more. Currently, Universe 10 has already been affected by my lord's anger, and the 4 poles have begun to leak. If we use Bushu Bao, the Earth cultivators of Universe 10 will barely be able to hold on for another 30 years before they completely disappear. At that moment, Wang Ling took a deep breath. He had already decided. He was going to send this guy to the 10th universe. On the other side, on Chrysanthemum Island, Immortal Toya had already received a message from Book of Sage Immortal disguised as Wang Ling. As an iPad, Book of Sage Immortal could connect to any electronic device in the world and send messages to it. Immortal Toya was very excited. This was his first time going abroad on a mission, and he was well aware that Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch was giving him a chance. Congratulations, Brother Toya, you've been chosen. Granate-throwing Senior Immortal congratulated him on the side. The main reason your realm hasn't advanced for so long is because your mind hasn't calmed down. What do you mean, Senior Immortal? As an apothecary, his mind was steadier than that of a regular cultivator. That was because the process of refining medicine itself required a calm mind. If you were too hot-tempered, the success rate of refining elixirs would be greatly reduced. Hence, many apothecaries in the industry were rather easygoing. Brother Toya, don't misunderstand. Your mind naturally can't compare with that of a regular cultivator. But the more open your mind is, the more likely it is that someone will take advantage of it. Chrysanthemum Island has now been invaded and is in a state of devastation. Even if you don't show it, you definitely have resentment in your heart. Speaking up to this point, Granate-throwing Senior Immortal sighed. So in a situation like this, it's usually very important to have a girlfriend, Immortal Toya. If Brother Toya had a girlfriend, you could have sex with her to vent your resentment. But now that you don't have one, only Brother Toya can personally resolve this issue, which is the only way to purify your mind. Granate-throwing Senior Immortal said, every cultivator who has reached a bottleneck will run into a problem in their mind. After all, Brother Toya isn't old Demon Wang. Brother Ling is helping Brother Toya out. What does this have to do with old Demon Wang, Brother Toya, have you forgotten? Back then, in order to purify his mind, old Demon Wang specially opened a wood-carving shop to carve wooden airplane cups. It's hard for a regular cultivator to achieve that kind of perseverance and craftsmanship. Immortal Toya was silent for a long time at these words. After a moment, his eyes suddenly fell on Granate-throwing Senior Immortal's phone, and he took a deep breath. Senior Immortal, may I ask what this is? As Brother Toya can see, this is a dating app. Just click scan, and the app's radar will automatically activate to scan for female cultivators within a range of 500 li who are most compatible with your interests and hobbies. But, Brother Toya, you and I aren't young anymore. You need to think about your future. It's good for you to have a permanent partner. With a partner, your success rate in refining elixirs in the future will also increase greatly. But, of course, it's too late for this incident. But you should always prepare for a rainy day, right? I've only just come into contact with this app. When Brother Toya comes back, I think I'll have more or less finished studying it. When the time comes, I can teach Brother Toya step by step and find a mother for Jean Sure and Yin Sure. But, there are no buts, Brother Toya. This is a mission. It's also the first time the Office of Strategic Deception has assigned you a mission since its establishment. The organization is very concerned about your life. The Chrysanthemum Island incident this time. If Brother Ling hadn't taken action, I'm afraid Brother Toya's mind would have already collapsed. So shouldn't Brother Toya find a wife who can fry crispy noodle snacks to repay Brother Ling? But, another but. Why do I feel like Brother Toya is so nervous? I'm just doing my own research now, and I haven't figured it out yet. I understand, Senior Immortal, but... Immortal Toya took a deep breath. He had already been holding it in for a long time. If he didn't finish, he felt like he would die. In the next moment, before Granate-throwing Senior Immortal could speak, he reached out to cover the latter's mouth. But, when Senior Immortal makes friends, can you not use my profile picture? Chapter 883. The Toya clan's 9 cycles exquisite pagoda contained the clan's secrets, and contained the clan's supreme and unique pill recipes. Only in the hands of the Toya clan would the value of this magic artifact be of great use. Holding the tower up, Immortal Toya dripped his blood essence onto the top of the tower, and a golden light instantly rushed out. What powerful fluctuations! Granate-throwing Senior Immortal was secretly alarmed. I've already awakened the tower spirit. The tower spirit is currently awakening. The tower spirit can fuse with me and increase my battle power. Immortal Toya said, but only those with the bloodline of my Toya clan can awaken the pagoda spirit, which is a little troublesome. Generally, you need to use blood essence to create the eye at the top of the pagoda. It took me a long time to aim that drop of blood. Grenade throwing senior immortal. Dozens of seconds later, the ripples from the exquisite pagoda stopped. Immortal Toya and grenade throwing senior immortal waited for a good while, but the Linglong pagoda actually didn't respond. Grenade throwing senior immortal, what do you mean? Why isn't there any movement? Could it be that Brother Dong's shooting posture is incorrect? Impossible. I've been practicing this move for a very long time. His accuracy is extremely high, and there are almost no mistakes. Immortal Toya didn't dare believe it. He started to look up the Toya clan's ancient records, which contained information on the pagoda spirit. In the end, he was sure that it wasn't his problem. It shouldn't be my problem. What did brother to say? My ancestors said that this tower spirit has a flaw in its personality. It's quite mischievous. Furthermore, he has a reverse personality, Immortal Toya said telepathically. Antisocial personality? It means that even if we wait for it to come out, it won't come out. The best way is to ignore it. After saying that, Immortal Toya and grenade-throwing senior immortal turned around and pretended to be indifferent. Sure enough, the exquisite pagoda emitted another fluctuation. Grenade-throwing senior immortal broke out in a sweat. This pagoda spirit is a little interesting, brother too, but come to think of it, how are you going to control it? Immortal Toya sighed. At this moment, his entire body was trembling. His heart was resisting, but in order to improve his combat strength, he had no other choice. Immortal Toya turned his head and tore off his clothes to reveal the expression of a young girl who had been roughed up by several burly men, and he pinched his throat. Ah! Yamit! Yamit! No! Don't possess me! As soon as he finished speaking, the 9-rotation exquisite pagoda trembled slightly. Then, an indistinct figure appeared at the top of the pagoda. When he came back to his senses, the figure had already materialized. It was a girl dressed in azure clothes. The girl was tall and slender, with a small face and red lips. Her breasts and buttocks were plentiful. The moment she materialized, she instantly turned into a beam of light and merged into Immortal Toya's body. Immortal Toya felt the changes in his body in disbelief. He felt that he was indeed much stronger than before. Grenade-throwing senior immortal, elsewhere, on the border of Mishio Nation, Night Chief was still active. After the failure of the operation against the Office of Strategic Deception, Night Chief's reputation in the dark network had suffered a huge blow, and for the first time, President Bai felt that being a boss wasn't easy. To prop up Night Chief, strength wasn't the only thing he needed to rely on. But President Bai wasn't in a hurry. He was still working on a new plan, the Night Chief National Fitness Program. It was also known as the National Fitness Program, for short. In this plan, President Bai decided to target middle-aged and elderly members around the world to help Night Chief raise a huge sum of money for the next big operation. Thus, after the Office of Strategic Deception's opening ceremony, a clinic called Night Fitness Fire Therapy Center sprung up like bamboo shoots after a rain. The members of Night Chief started to lay out the fire therapy center, which didn't require a lot of money. It really didn't have a lot of resources. A 10-square-meter room, 2 fire therapy beds, and an unprofessional masseuse were enough. At that moment, Long Ming was reporting on the progress of the fire therapy center. Lord President, the basic layout of Night Fitness Fire Therapy Center has already been completed. Currently, the 121 branches are doing well, and we've collected a lot of money. Our salesmen have already sold tens of thousands of fire therapy beds, raising close to 100 million yuan. Given this momentum, it won't be long before we have several billion in savings. Half a month at the soonest. That's right. President Bai nodded. I've already seen the tweets on the official account, they're very well written. But I think we can exaggerate the efficacy a little more. Long Ming sweated. If that's the case, it's very likely that Mishio Nation's Consumer Association will target us. When did my Night Chief start to be afraid of swindling people? In any case, We're just raising funds in the short term. Once we take the money, we'll run. President Bai smiled. Just do as I say. Long Ming sweated and didn't dare refute him at all. Thus, that night, Long Ming spent a lot of effort to hire hundreds of water armies to coordinate with the new tweets on the official account to promote the wonderful effects of the fire therapy beds. User 1, 18,000 likes. The cultivator downstairs is at the golden core stage. When he advanced to the nascent soul stage a while ago, his nascent soul ran outside his dantian. The doctor said that it was a pregnancy outside the dantian, and if it wasn't treated in time and allowed to continue, it was very likely that he would lose all his cultivation. My friend didn't believe it and stubbornly refused to believe the doctor, but look at the result. Because the nascent soul outside the dantian was exposed and absorbed too much smog, it directly died of pneumonia. It died in the womb, simply. When my friend went to see the doctor again, he said that it was already hopeless, and suggested that my friend remove the abandoned nascent soul, otherwise even his life would be in danger. In the end, by chance, my friend came across the Night Fitness Fire Therapy Center. After 2 days of fire therapy, the nascent soul that was clearly dead actually came back to life on the spot, and it even crawled back into the dantian alive and kicking. User 2, 16,000 likes, please support Night Fitness Fire Therapy. Old Lee downstairs was born with a disability and couldn't feel his legs. When he was young, he was humiliated, and was so angry that he chopped off his legs. But look at the result. After using the fire therapy, not only did Old Lee grow a new pair of legs, he also regained his senses. Even the legs in the middle have become thicker. User 3, 120,000 likes, the spring breeze of reform blows through the door, and Night Fitness Fire Therapy is full of vigor. A small fire therapy bed nourishes the kidneys, and prolongs life, and healthcare is full of vigor. Guess what happened to my friend's spirit beast, Salted Fish King, after using the fire therapy bed? It directly evolved into a mega beast. The scene had already turned into a golden exploding carp ripping through space. This was simply a huge profit, not a loss at all. Forget it. I'm going to buy a bed. Chapter 884. The full fitness fire treatment plan was a new plan that Long Ming had taken the lead in submitting. The purpose of everything was to raise enough funds for Night Chief in the short term so that they could carry out the next wave of operations. Nowadays, it wasn't easy to do anything. The cost of transnational crime was too high, and President Bai had to change his identity every time he went to Huaxiu Nation. The price of identity information on the dark online network alone was sky-high, and he was now a transnational SSSR-level wanted criminal. As soon as he entered the country, as long as his real identity was discovered by customs, he could be directly shot on the spot. There had been precedents for this type of criminal before. It was a dark network cybercriminal called Yushi Bird, the she as in the red sunset, and bird as in the beast. This famous female wanted criminal controlled various online forums to post all kinds of rumors and information, and repeatedly led the way. She charged people to delete posts, manipulated them in the dark, and planted a small tent virus on the public network, causing it to be paralyzed. Later, Huaxiu Alliance approved and decided to shoot this Yushi Bird on the spot. It was said that this Miss Yushi Bird didn't die peacefully. Just like that, she became the first famous keyboard warrior in Huaxiu Nation's history to be shot. The internet wasn't a place where she could get away scot-free. She didn't know how much trouble her actions would cause innocent people, nor did she think carefully about the consequences of her actions. She had been discovered by customs at the security checkpoint on the way to Sun Island. When she was shot, a bullet the size of a durian had pierced her chest directly. Yushi Bird's eyes were wide open, and blood had splattered all over her face, which had been injected with hyaluronic acid. When she fell to the ground, her pointed chin was like an awl as it pierced deep into the ground. President Bai had seen this scene before, and he still had lingering fear. Customs' shoot-to-death bullet was specially made, and was also known as the death bullet. Each one was extremely expensive to make, in order to ensure that these criminals would die on the spot as soon as possible. Thus, President Bai had no choice but to buy new identity information, which was an expense he couldn't bear to part with. Unless he really had no other choice, he wouldn't cause trouble for himself. The death bullet had an extremely strong ability to inflict serious injuries, which was simply the bane of his existence. President Bai shook his head and stopped thinking about it. Our next operation is against number 60 high. I'm going to uproot number 60 high. With sufficient funds this time, there's no harm in blowing up this mere foundation establishment stage school. Long Ming was also full of confidence regarding this. However, the two of them still felt uneasy. And the source of this unease was Wang Ling. This young man, no, they didn't want to admit that this was a 16-year-old boy. It was obvious that this was a big shot, but they had never been clear on why such a big shot was studying at number 60 high. President Bai had always been stubborn and wanted to get revenge on Wang Ling. And now, President Bai had clearly thought it through. Revenge against the king's order, this plan was basically impossible to achieve, so after careful consideration, President Bai modified the plan to blow up the school. While he was thinking, the alarm inside Night Chief suddenly went off, and its piercing wail resounded throughout the entire Night Chief base. What's going on? Hurry up and investigate. Baizha frowned slightly. Their base had been relocated several times and was now underground. It would be very difficult to discover them. Knowing that Mishio Nation's FCI was already searching for Night Chief had been on high alert for the last 2 days. The technicians were retrieving a schematic of the invasion, which was a 3D model of Night Chief's base. The place of invasion was marked with the heat source, and it could be clearly seen that there was a powerful energy rapidly cutting through the ground from above the base like a sharp knife, penetrating deep into the soil and invading. What's this? Ah! My blazing biceps. Ah! This little mouth is swallowing me. It hurts. Very quickly, there were screams from above the base. President Bai's eyes were fixed on the direction of the heat invasion, and the corners of his mouth twitched. Impudent. You're actually looking for trouble with me. He looked up at the sky and let out a shrill cry. In a split second, an invisible sound wave spread out, and a huge hole appeared in the ceiling with a bang. Long Ming's liver ached when he saw this. Now, they would have to use the money they had just earned to repair the base again. A large part of the reason why Night Chief wasn't doing well at the moment was because of the damage to the base. And every time there was a fight at the base, President Bai couldn't help making a hole in it. Long Ming wanted to cry. It wasn't easy to make money. The worst thing was that this sound wave technique actually had no effect on the invading thing. Instead, the invading thing crawled through the hole into the base's central control room. It was actually a giant red worm, and it was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws as it licked all the major personnel in the base with its long tongue. With each person it swallowed, its body swelled up a little. Long Ming, hurry up and use your Dragon Clan's secret technique. Control this gluttonous snake. Seeing that his opponent was a worm, President Bai was even less flustered. Long Ming's Dragon Clan's secret skill originally had a strong control effect on insects. If he could capture such a strong worm, he would be able to control it. If he could capture such a powerful worm, it would be a pretty good fighting force. Lord Venerable, please protect me. Long Ming nodded and swiftly responded. A magic seal bloomed in his hand, and then it swiftly formed. Then, Long Ming slapped the ground with one hand, and a series of runes blossomed like a lotus flower to form a circular array. Then, Long Ming swiftly slit his wrist and dripped his blood on the array. The moment the blood fused into the array, a fragrance instantly wafted over. This is... President Bai frowned slightly. This is my Dragon Clan's secret insect-catching array. When I sprinkle the power of my blood on it and ignite it, it will produce a unique fragrance which insects and spirit beasts can't resist. As long as the other party enters this array, they'll be imprisoned by it. But won't it be dangerous for you to just stand here? President Bai asked. Lord Venerable, rest assured, I won't. These captured insects will be completely attracted by the fragrance of my blood and forget my existence. It's impossible for them to attack me, I can. Before he could finish his sentence, the worm above his head directly stuck out a tongue and swept Long Ming away. President Bai, you actually think my venerable self is a worm? What a blind person, but the smell isn't bad. Devil Gut Fungus Lord stared at President Bai. When I crossed the sea to come here, I suddenly smelled a very strong energy underground. It looks like it's you without a doubt. President Bai, to break into this place, you have to pay the price. Before he could say the word, price, President Bai was gone. Chapter 885. This was an extremely bad battle experience. It wasn't just Long Ming, even President Bai felt that he had been caught a little off guard. But Long Ming and President Bai hadn't truly died, because Devil Gut Fungus Lord had merely devoured them and obtained their power. President Bai's description was very apartment. Devil Gut Fungus Lord was essentially a gluttonous snake, and the more he devoured, the more powerful he became. Secret Arts of the White Clan, Secret Arts of the Dragon Clan. After devouring the two people, Devil Gut Fungus Lord swiftly digested his new power. The Dragon Clan's formidable insect control ability and the White Clan's formidable secret art of creation boosted Devil Gut Fungus Lord's confidence. He no longer had to worry about the Buddha's light illumination. This secret art of creation was too powerful. Even if he was being roasted by the Buddha's light, Devil Gut Fungus Lord was confident that he could quickly repair his damaged bacteria. The power of repair and the powerful ability to reproduce complemented each other, which gave the germs which Devil Gut Fungus Lord bred the ability of superbugs. The combination of the ability to recover and the ability to reproduce delighted Devil Gut Fungus Lord. And most importantly, Devil Gut Fungus Lord was pleasantly surprised to discover that President Bai actually had the power of Outer Tao. He had simply swallowed a big treasure. Although President Bai hadn't completely collected the power of the 6 great Outer Tao yet, he already possessed 3 types of power. Unfortunately, he was the one who ultimately benefited from these Outer Tao powers. President Bai had underestimated the enemy, and had been devoured before he even had a chance to activate reverse 2 poles. Just now, his life had really been hanging by a thread. As expected, I'm the chosen one. Devil Gut Fungus Lord sneered sinisterly. If President Bai had used the power of reverse 2 poles just now, the devouring would have been ineffective, because reverse 2 poles was an Outer Tao ability that defied the heavens and changed one's fate. Furthermore, this Outer Tao ability usually wouldn't be used lightly unless one's life was hanging by a thread. This was an expert's negligence. Nowadays, too many experts didn't even have a sliver of HP left and didn't know how to fight at all, so they lost in vain. It could be said that President Bai was a classic example. Furthermore, he actually dared to speak in battle. Usually, the one who died did so because he talked too much. Our combination is simply heaven sent. Devil Gut Fungus Lord cackled. In the next moment, he waved his hand, and many spatial summoning arrays appeared on the ground out of thin air. He combined his summoning formation with the dragon race's secret technique to connect to Insect Valley. He summoned the strongest and cruelest bug in Insect Valley, the Undying Bug. This was a kind of black caterpillar that was half a meter long and covered with sharp thorns. Its body was covered with poisonous thorns, and it liked the dark. It was not afraid of water and fire, but it preferred to live in water. In an environment with liquid, the undying worm's undying ability would be displayed to the fullest. In just a short span of 3 seconds, the undying worm would be able to recover immediately, no matter how severe its injuries were, as long as it didn't die immediately. The undying worms did not like to be exposed to sunlight, so Devil Gut Fungus Lord had applied a layer of fungal coat on the summoned undying worms to block the light. Thus, when Immortal Toya rushed to the battlefield, he saw a terrifying scene that looked like the end of the world. On the border of Mishio Nation, a sinkhole several li long had sunk in, and a dense swarm of undying worms occupied most of Immortal Toya's line of sight. Like a fountain, they poured out of the sinkhole in a steady stream and devoured everything around them, even eating away at their own kind. One by one, the electric poles and vehicles on the road were devoured, and the roads and green belts on the outskirts were also eaten away bit by bit. This scene was so horrifying that it felt like the scene of a car accident at a New Year's Eve concert. Immortal Toya, who had fused with the pagoda spirit, arrived at the scene. His whole body gave off alternating blue and green spirit light. Immortal Toya's healing spirit energy was originally azure blue, but after fusing with the pagoda spirit, his spirit light now had a touch of green. This was Immortal Toya's first international mission. On one hand, it was to boost the Office of Strategic Deception's international status, and on the other hand, it was to calm his mind so that he could go further down the road. Looking at the scene in front of him, Immortal Toya, dressed in a purple Taoist robe, pursed his lips tightly. His eyes were extremely cautious as he paid close attention to the powerful fluctuations of energy underground. At the same time, there was a slightly shaken expression on his face. That was because this fluctuation was much stronger than when they had encountered President Bai before. "I don't want to know what's going on at all," Immortal Toya said to himself. In the end, the pagoda spirit replied in his mind, "What an incompetent good-for-nothing. You can't even see this." Devil Gut Fungus Lord devoured Baija's strength, and even that descendant of the dragon clan was devoured as well. So that was what was going on, Immortal Toya nodded to himself. His combat ability had indeed improved, but for the moment, Immortal Toya was completely clueless about what to do in this situation, and didn't know how to deal with it. A lack of combat experience was an apothecary's Achilles heel. In a peaceful era, their biggest role was to refine elixirs and the like. In the past, when apothecaries met each other and threw out an angry Buddha fire lotus without saying a word, Old Li had long since ended. As a modern apothecary, his current role in the current situation was to play the role of a nanny. And it just so happened that this role had always been despised. Nowadays, a lot of battles depended on combat strength, and there was an endless stream of flashy spells. Any side that brought along an apothecary nanny would be despised. Hence, when forming a team of cultivators who went out to gain experience, it was clearly stated, no nannies. When going out to gain experience, as long as you prepared enough healing elixirs in advance, there was no need to bring an apothecary with you at all. Not only was the cost of hiring an apothecary high, any apothecary who was casually brought along would be labeled a coward. This was a particular prejudice modern cultivators had against apothecaries, which many apothecaries couldn't do anything about. While Immortal Toya was pondering this, the ground suddenly shook, and a purple-black figure burst out of the ground like a fountain. Another one, here to deliver his head? In the air, Devil Gut Fungus Lord stared at Immortal Toya from a distance with a crafty expression on his face. He noticed the layer of blue and green light wrapped around Immortal Toya, and a pleasantly surprised expression appeared on his face. A world-defying magic artifact. It looked like this wasn't just delivering his head, he was also delivering equipment. He had been worried that he didn't have a suitable place to grow his bacteria. This magic artifact was actually pretty good. Genius 1 second. Remember website URL. Mobile version URL. Chapter 886. As the Toya clan's ancestral world-defying magic artifact, the 9 Cycles exquisite pagoda had been an unprecedented boost to the clan. This was a magic artifact left behind by the clan's ancestors. Unlike a certain person who relied solely on an ancestral granny to fight, the pagoda spirit of the 9 Cycles exquisite pagoda had formidable combat ability. What do you think your chances of winning are if you use a foreign object to fight? Devil Gut Fungus Lord stood steadily in the air. With a wave of his hand, the countless immortal bugs on the ground surged toward Immortal Toya like locusts. The immortal bugs blotted out the sky and the sun, forming a huge shadow that covered the area in front of them with astonishing momentum. This array of bugs contained a super virus, so they absolutely couldn't get close. Ordinary Taoist robes wouldn't be able to withstand it at all, the slightest contact would instantly turn them into a rag. However, it wouldn't be easy for these virus-carrying immortal bugs to get close to him. Don't stop them. Immortal Toya roared at the array of bugs. In the next moment, his body moved on its own. The tower's spirit was controlling his body. In an instant, green spiritual light surged out of his body and collided directly with the pitch-black insect formation that covered the sky. This green light was none other than the light of purification unique to apothecaries. The light of purification was also related to the qi accumulated in apothecaries' bodies after refining medicine for many years. This qi was called medicine qi. A senior pharmacist could have up to 10,000 kinds of medicine qi, which had a lot to do with the medicinal herbs they used to refine medicine. Thus, while Immortal Toya was repairing the 9 cycles exquisite pagoda, he had worked himself to the bone in order to raise enough money to repair the magic artifact, and it wasn't completely in vain. For many people, it might be impossible to work, but it was very useful. During this period of time, Immortal Toya had taken on over 100 different tasks, and the number of medicinal herbs he had come into contact with had also increased significantly. That was because many of the refinement orders required customers to provide complete sets of medicinal herbs. Even if they failed in the end, Immortal Toya didn't need to pay any compensation at all. This was because customers who came to him to refine medicine would generally take out refinement insurance to ensure that losses were minimized in the event of a failure. On the other hand, Immortal Toya would also conduct research on new types of elixirs, and the materials for these elixirs were also developed by Immortal Toya in a different way. For example, the IFI pill, the portable rechargeable pill, the beauty pill, and the yellow pill that was popular among the upper-class men some time ago. After many medicinal ingredients were mixed together, they became a new type of medicinal ingredient. Before he knew it, the number of medicinal herbs that Immortal Toya had come into contact with had already exceeded 10,000. There were primitive medicinal herbs, common medicinal herbs, as well as many rare and mutated medicinal herbs. Now that the medicinal qi of these medicinal herbs overlapped with each other, and with the help of the pagoda's spirit's power, this purifying light actually became exceptionally powerful. Green light enveloped the horizon, just like the sun piercing through the dark night and the dawn quietly streaking across the horizon. The light of purification shuttled through the cycle of reincarnation. The moment the virus-laced undying worms came into contact with the purifying light that was mixed with tens of thousands of medicinal qi, their bodies emitted hot steam, and finally turned into small balls of fire, directly burned to death. Immortal Toya was overjoyed at this scene. The purifying light, combined with tens of thousands of medicinal qi, was the natural nemesis of these viruses and undying worms. Their fierce attack created a heroic déjà vu of moths flying into a flame, as if hundreds of thousands of moths were running into the fire. Devil Gut Fungus Lord realized that he had underestimated the power of the purifying light, which was a mixture of tens of thousands of medicinal qi. This purifying light didn't just contain medicinal qi, it was also mixed with all kinds of antibiotics and vitamins A, B, C, F, G. The undying worms couldn't enter his body at all, and neither could the viruses. But, however, Devil Gut Fungus Lord didn't panic at all. These undying worms looked fierce, but the truth was that he hadn't even used 20% of his strength. Although this purifying light was difficult to deal with, it could withstand the attack of hundreds of thousands of virus-laced undying worms. What if he increased the number? 10 million undying worms. In the next moment, Devil Gut Fungus Lord shook his finger. The ground trembled, and countless undying worms surged out of the cracked earth like a volcanic eruption. Both Immortal Toya and the pagoda spirit were stunned at this scene. This kind of power had already completely surpassed true immortal level, and most importantly, these tens of millions of virus-laced undying worms had gained a whole new level of power. Each undying worm was actually surrounded by a dark blue light. This was the power of the water element. President Bai originally had the power to enslave the elements of outer Tao. Now that Devil Gut Fungus Lord had swallowed President Bai's power and applied the power of the water element to the undying worms, the purifying light had just burned them, but these undying worms actually came back to life again. How was he going to fight now? Immortal Toya felt that he couldn't hold on much longer. After swallowing President Bai, Long Ming, and many of Night Chief's senior members, Devil Gut Fungus Lord's abilities had improved tremendously. This frightening spiritual pressure made Immortal Toya sweat profusely. Crap. I can't hold on much longer. Immortal Toya held on with all his might. But in the face of the pressure from these 10 million undying worms, the green purifying light was dissipating little by little. In the end, the army of 10 million insects successfully gnawed on Immortal Toya's finger. Devil Gut Fungus Lord was overjoyed at this scene. This is like an ant trying to shake a tree, a mantis trying to stop a chariot. He recited 2 idioms in a row to show that he was very cultured. At the same time, he gazed deeply at Immortal Toya, who had been swallowed up. In a flash, he could already sense that Immortal Toya's aura had completely disappeared. Furthermore, he had already lost the idea of swallowing Immortal Toya. He carefully controlled the undying worms, and his only goal was the 9 cycles exquisite pagoda. With a wave of his hand, Devil Gut Fungus Lord moved the army of 10 million insects away. He was surprised to find that the green purifying light which the pagoda spirit had emitted hadn't been completely extinguished, and a tiny cluster of light, like a firefly, was still floating in the air. In the next moment, Immortal Toya's body actually regrew along this cluster of fireflies. In the end, something unexpected happened. Immortal Toya was resurrected. And at that moment, there were actually 2 pagoda spirits standing behind Immortal Toya. What was this? Devil Gut Fungus Lord was very puzzled. Holding hands, the 2 pagoda spirits circled Immortal Toya. Immortal Toya smiled. In the end, this was an uncultured bacterium. It didn't even know what 2-people rotation was. Chapter 887. When the second pagoda spirit came out, Devil Gut Fungus Lord was stupefied. There had only been 1 pagoda spirit, but now there were 2. And it was clear that this wasn't a clone of the pagoda spirit, but an extra one. Immortal Toya's strength and aura had doubled after the appearance of the second pagoda spirit. What on earth was going on? Devil Gut Fungus Lord took a deep breath. He manipulated an army of 10 million insects with the power to devour everything. But at the same time, such a huge commotion alarmed Mishio's government forces. Night Chief was already under Mishio's surveillance to begin with. Now that there was a huge energy fluctuation on the border, the defense mechanism was activated. Now, Devil Gut Fungus Lord's opponent wasn't just Immortal Toya, there was also Mishio's National Defense Army, as well as Mishio cultivators who had heard the news and were now on their way. The situation didn't look good, but Devil Gut Fungus Lord was still very calm. To him, these Mishio cultivators who had heard the news were nothing more than energy supplements. The more he devoured, the stronger he would become. Boom! Several missiles flew at Devil Gut Fungus Lord, who didn't even look at them as he directly manipulated his insect army to block them with his body. There was an explosion in the sky, and a large number of insects were burned to death in a raging inferno. These weren't ordinary missiles, but spirit power bombs, which were compressed from high-density spirit power molecules. The large-caliber warheads were more destructive than primitive nuclear bombs, and they were very environmentally friendly and didn't have radiation or other side effects. In the Second World War of modern cultivation history, a single spirit power bomb directly destroyed a country. The powerful shockwave caused Devil Gut Fungus Lord to be shaken by the airflow in the air, but it was completely harmless. You want to deal with me with just a few missiles? You're still too inexperienced. Devil Gut Fungus Lord raised his hand high, completely disregarding the National Defense Army's missiles. The truth was that given Devil Gut Fungus Lord's current ability, he could already have his insect army devour the missiles before they exploded. What happened just now was purely because Devil Gut Fungus Lord wanted to test how strong the missiles were. In the end, Devil Gut Fungus Lord was very disappointed. These missiles were too weak. They were far weaker than the Wutian Golden Buddha Palm. In Devil Gut Fungus Lord's view, these missiles weren't even as strong as Immortal Toya's Light of Purification. Did they fail? in the National Defense Command, an officer saw the scene from the satellite surveillance screen. "Commander, what should we do now?" The technician in charge of ballistic control was also breaking out in cold sweat. "We can only continue to use missiles to harass them." Bigger warheads are still being approved, but as soldiers of Mishio Nation, is it really okay for us to speak Huaxia so openly? The author hasn't passed CET-4, so there's nothing I can do about it. Now is not the time to argue about this. Has Mishio Alliance issued a notice? It has been sent, Commander. Mishio Alliance had already sent all the hero cultivators to the front. The fastest reinforcements are about to arrive. Very good. The commanding officer nodded. At the same time, his gaze fell on Immortal Toya's face on the monitor. When all was said and done, this was an invasion on Mishio Nation's border. They didn't want the limelight to be stolen by a Huaxio cultivator. Mishio Alliance was Mishio Nation's alliance of cultivators. Although its organizational structure was slightly different from Huaxio Alliance's, Mishio Alliance's role was the same. It was responsible for maintaining and coordinating order among the major cultivator organizations, tabulating the ranking of the most powerful cultivators in the country, and so on. Compared with other countries, Mishio Alliance also had a special feature, and that was its hero mechanism. At that moment, the nearest hero had already rushed to the front of the battlefield. In the air, the two pagoda spirits circled around Immortal Toya, and then fused with him. Two green balls of light appeared around Immortal Toya's body, like planets orbiting the sun. As Devil Gut Fungus Lord had said, his battle strength had already doubled. But this duel was still not going to be easy. Devil Gut Fungus Lord was too strong. Perhaps Immortal Toya would have to use the full power of the 9 cycles exquisite pagoda before he could put up a fight. But to do so, Immortal Toya had to be killed 9 times. Each time he died, another pagoda spirit would appear next to him. Right now, he was in the 2-people rotation state. His strongest form was the 9-people rotation state. So Immortal Toya had 9 lives in total. Devil Gut Fungus Lord had to kill him 9 times. Thus, the true pronunciation of rotation in the 9 cycles exquisite pagoda wasn't the 3rd, but the 4th. This was also how the 9 cycles exquisite pagoda got its name. But the current situation was already very worrying, and the last thing Immortal Toya wanted was for Devil Gut Fungus Lord to continue relying on devouring to gain strength. However, the most worrisome situation had still happened. In the distance, a masked heroine in a leather coat was swiftly moving forward while leaning on a building. White silk shot out of her butt. If Immortal Toya wasn't mistaken, this was probably spider silk. Don't be afraid. I'm here. The masked heroine spat out the spider silk from her but onto the soles of Immortal Toya's feet as she hung upside down in the air. Immortal Toya dropped his forehead into his hand. May I ask who you are? I'm Mishio's A-class hero, Silken Heroine. The masked heroine proudly introduced herself in a loud voice. I don't have any other interests or hobbies, but I like to maintain world peace. This opponent looks very fierce, but don't worry, as long as I'm here, he won't be able to hurt you at all. Immortal Toya, before the poor Silken Heroine could finish speaking, she had already disappeared. Immortal Toya looked down. There was already no trace of the Silken Heroine under his feet, except for a strand of spider silk that was still fluttering on the soles of his feet like chewing gum. Immortal Toya was a little speechless at this situation. He didn't know how strong an A-class hero was, but it was clear that Devil Gut Fungus Lord wasn't someone an A-class hero could deal with. Couldn't Mishio Alliance send someone a little more reliable? Just as Immortal Toya was thinking this, an old man wearing a blue and white porcelain helmet strolled over unhurriedly in the air in the distance. Another one who's here to die. Devil Gut Fungus Lord sneered. He controlled the insect army to pounce on the old man. However, the old man just tilted his neck, and in the next moment, all the insects that got close to him actually changed. Their bodies were actually assimilated by the old man's porcelain power and became extremely fragile. With a gentle push of chi, the old man turned these blue and white porcelain insects into fine powder. Immortal Toya was blank. You are? The old man in the blue and white porcelain helmet said faintly, I am an SS-class hero, Porcelano. Immortal Toya. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.